Good evening. My name is Steve Monroe. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's the Inland Wetlands Commission meeting for the town of Monroe. Today is October 24th? 23rd, 2019, and it is 7:03 p.m. First order of business, pledge of allegiance. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to introduce the members of the commission, the staff present tonight, starting on my right, Clark Ingris, Ross Mastroraco, Jim Stewart, who is a licensed engineer and surveyor in the state of Connecticut, myself, Keith Romano. To my left is Jim Weinberg, our vice chairman, Lois Spence, and secretary, right? Still?
Yep.
Okay, I got that.
Two hats.
Okay. We got Donna Szynski, our office manager, Denise Halstead, our inland wetlands agent, and Sarah Schraber, recording secretary. Before we start, I'd like to read our mission statement and how the meeting will proceed. The Inland Wetlands Mission Statement. The objective and purpose of the Inland Wetlands Commission is to provide for the overall protection and preservation of the inland wetlands and watercourses within the town of Monroe. Meeting procedure. In the normal course of our meetings, we will hear public hearings and other applications. The protocol for public hearings is to have an applicant make a presentation to the commission, during which and after which the commission will ask the applicant questions. The commission will then review town staff or other independent comments. The meeting will then be open for public comment. I'll ask that all comments be made to the chair or commission. After any and all comments pro, opposition, or of a general nature are made, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. It is not necessary that the applicant respond, but generally in their best interest to do so. There will be no further opportunities for new questions unless new material is entered in as evidence or testimony during their response. Please keep all comments pro and con specific to inland wetlands related matters. Other applications that do not involve a public hearing will follow a similar format, with the exception that there will be no public comments allowed. The meeting follows our published agenda unless otherwise amended. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes. So, under, let's see, enforcement, item number 4, remediation submissions, we have a time extension request from 244 Web Circle. They were supposed to submit tonight or soon. And then under item 9, time extensions, I'd like to add IWC 2018-07, 205 Monroe Turnpike. They are asking for a third time, this is for a third time, a 90-day time extension to fulfill conditions A of their approval. And I think that is it. Those 2 items.
Okay. All right, so now this is the general public participation. Anybody has anything of a general nature they want to say here?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I do.
Okay, come on, please stand up and state your name.
Do you mind if I sit? I've been doing a lot of work and lifting in the lower part of the back. It's really...
Okay, so if you just loudly just state your name and address.
Sure. Jerry Islip, I-S-L-E-I, B as in boy, 53 Cedar Lane, and of course Monroe.
Yeah, the floor is yours.
We have, going back quite a few years, we had a nice little stream that used to come through our property, and then they put in Jackson Drive, and the first selectman said to me at the time over there, they were putting 2 big pipes in on Purdy Hill Road, and they were putting in a pipe for us. And he says, in years to come, he says, you know, it's going to probably need work, and we might have to put in a bigger pipe, because they're thinking of extending Jackson Drive right out to the Trumbull line. All right, we didn't have any problems, and then they extended it on to the Trumbull line, and then Trumbull came down and extended into Monroe, and that started to create a problem with the stream that we had on there, with silt coming down. And then Woody, I don't know if any of you know Woody when he was a town engineer. This is going back a number of years. And he came and he looked at the property, and he says, yes, he says, that has to be dredged out because it's going to cause a problem. So they did it 3 times over the years. The 3rd time, when they did it, they had a meeting in Trumbull, and on Teller Road, they were going to put in a subdivision. And all that water was going to come down over across my property. And I said, that's going to create a problem. So I went to that town meeting in Trumbull. And when it came time to speak, and I got up and I told him my name, I told him about the stream, and he got up and he looks like this over and he says, is there any representative here from the town of Monroe? Nobody was there. He says, well, it's Monroe's problem now. And ever since that time, with the extra water coming down from Teller Road, you can see that it's a stream. And I have pictures of it, and it's overcovered, it's a silt. And Woody, the town engineer at the time, had a 20 by 20 foot area, about 7 feet deep, as a retainer for to hold all that water. That now is probably only about 6 inches from the top. The rest is all silt that's filled in. And I talked to the town, and the town said, well, I don't know. And Rick Schultz, he was the mediator between me and Selectman Kellogg. And Selectman Kellogg said, first I want to thank you for all your service to the town, because I was on quite a few boards. He says, but, he says, we can't cross on anybody's property without permission of the property owner. Well, I said, they did it 3 times before under the town engineer of Woody. And I said, and now it really needs to work before it gets a real problem. He says, well, I need the permission of the property owner. I said, well, you already had it 3 times. I said, if you want me to give it to you again, fine. He said, oh, no, you can't do it now. And I said, that's a strange statement. You need the permission from the property owner, but you can't do it right now? Well, he said, more or less, you can do it. All right, so we contacted, I can't think of his name now, he's down in Stevenson. When you go underneath there, and he has the big equipment, and so he came up, and it would be approximately $6,000 that we would have to pay to do that, which would be the town's responsibility. They never went to that Trumbull meeting. They should have gone to that Trumbull meeting. Trumbull says they got a 100-year plan. Well, I don't know about the back of the yard. The yard across the other side has got about a foot of water. The water is up over my pipes, and there is no channel, which the town used to maintain, that goes down to Purdy Hill Road. There's 2 big pipes down there. That whole back area, and I have pictures of that too, is flooded by about a foot or more of water, and the pipes are not even half full because there's no more channel. Everything is grown up across it. My neighbor across the street, his whole backyard gets flooded. I'm losing 20% probably of my property there. He says, because if I don't disclose that it gets flooded, when we have very heavy rain, they could turn around and sue, which is true. So now here we are, and Denise came down and she looked at the property and took pictures and everything on there, and she saw the silt that was down there. It's like a head. Hard to describe. But like I said before, the big pond that was in there, and Woody put it in there for a retainer, is now only about this much water, and it used to be 6 feet deep. All that stuff is coming down from up there. So we get it from Jackson, from Monroe, we get it from the Jackson where they hooked in from Trumbull, and we get it from Teller Road where they put in all that new development.
Denise, what do you see as significant, similar to what he's describing? I see the picture, but
Yeah,
what's your take on it?
It's, I mean, there's no flow.
Okay.
It's really silted in, and even when you come to the culvert,
Oh, this is another thing. You see that rock that's just about ready to go?
this one here is talking about.
I told the town about that, and then finally, they came over and they said, oh geez, we better fix that. So they put cement up, and he told me to watch it. He said, because if that thing goes, he says, probably we'll have to put a whole new wall in. I'd have known about it for many years, but I understand paperwork now. Paperwork, it's not like it used to be. One goes up, and the engineer goes to the front office or whatever, and the thing gets done. Now it sits for months. But that's what it was. It was being undermined, which they were aware of for years also.
What can we do
Well,
about this?
Because this, past practices, but with going on, I had told him to come here so that you could give him a little guidance. I basically said he's gonna have to do an application because the town is saying they're not gonna clean it for him.
So it's on him to do the work if he wants to, if he wants it done.
Right.
Is that the way I understand it?
That seems to be unfortunately the way it's going, but I felt he should come to the board to talk.
And as far as the town agencies go, other towns, it's totally dead-ended, it's not happening, the town's not doing anything.
That's what we're hearing.
Okay.
DPW isn't even taking care of the road culvert? That's not his problem.
No,
That's
the road
Monroe's
culvert's not his,
problem.
no, I know that,
That's
I know that.
Monroe's problem.
but
You see how I feel about the whole thing on there when the town says that it's,
I mean, you could say.
we need the person's permission, the
Is that
property
all
owner's
written?
permission.
That's all,
And I said, you've done it
that's
3
all
times
filled.
in the past.
Well, unfortunately, we're not the people that,
That's all
that we can make any
full of
decisions
silt.
as far as public
And we-
works
What
goes.
is that?
But, this is now public record that you came out
Supposed to be
here,
river.
and stated the case. I guess the only thing you could do is come with a plan to do the work.
Well, I was telling Denise, we had inland wetlands at that time when Woody had them, and he came down and he walked the property, and he said, yeah, this needs work.
Yeah.
All right, so Woody followed his directions 3 times, and that's all that I want to do, then, that we have to pay for it is follow what was done years ago.
Yep.
Now, the town engineer was out there with Rick Schultz, and he was keeping notes, Rick Schultz, and he asked the town engineer, he says, how much water comes down here? And he took out his iPhone, all it, right, and he showed him, and Rick Schultz went, all that comes down through here, and he goes, and he wrote right in his book. And it used to be a nice quiet stream.
You can see it all filled.
I mean, what's that?
I said you could see those photos too, it's just all filled.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
It's just, the flow is just not getting,
That's all heavy stuff that's moving down.
Yeah, no, I could see it.
No,
But again, we're not the Public Works Department, so we can't authorize any work on the
No,
town's behalf.
no, I know.
But as far as what we can do for you is we can approve a plan if it's presented to us to fix it.
Right.
But we're not the finance department and we're not the Public Works
No,
Department.
no,
so-
I understand that.
Yeah.
But it just gets me that Kevin Kellogg says, I need the permission of the property owner, and I said, you did it 3 times.
Well,
I
who's the
says,
are you the property owner?
Yeah.
Did you try giving them written permission? I mean,
Well, he said to me that Rick Kellogg told us what Ken Kellogg said. He said, I need permission of the property owner. I says, no problem, you did it 3 times before. I said, I'll give it to him verbally, or give it to him
But
written,
again-
but you can't do it now. Now, that's a strange statement.
yeah, you're outside of what this commission.
I know,
with
but
this-
I'm just-
and we're hearing loud and clear. There's nothing we can do about that.
No,
That's,
I'm just stating to where it came to now. So then I went, Monroe it is, the person that we called up, and it would be about $6,000 to do it like it was done years ago. In other words, the pond down there, get the retaining again, and just follow what was done before.
okay.
May I ask, about how many linear feet are we talking?
Pardon?
How many linear feet are we talking? Are we talking about like a 40-foot stream?
Oh, no. Know how long the stream is? From the road?
The part that's silted over,
Pardon?
the part that is silted over, how long
the whole
is that?
stream.
Is the whole thing?
It comes from Trumbull, it comes down through there, and we're, like I said, from Jackson Drive. They hooked up, and all that comes down there. And I told you, when he found out, Rick Kellogg, how much that water comes, he said, all that water comes down through here? And we have, like I said,
Where did all this silt come from?
it comes from back up in Trumbull, because once Trumbull put that in there with that other development, we had kind of a water problem. Then we really had a problem when we get a heavy rain, and that stuff just comes. You look at the stream and you look and you see this black stuff that's down in there, and it's filling up. Like I said, a 20-foot by 7-foot deep pond, there's only that much water sitting in there, and that's all the sludge, the stuff that's come down through there. And it's all being overgrown. And it used to be a flowing stream, which it is no more. And we did have inland wetlands when Woody was doing it. He came out, I was there, and Woody was talking with me, he said, this is the way we're going to do it. And that's all I want to do, is just to do it, to get all that stuff out of there, so it's at least that deep again, and it's a nice flowing stream.
So you understand that you can put an application in to do the maintenance, and we will, make a decision on that,
Okay?
all right?
Because if nothing is done, it's just going to keep on going down. Now, my neighbor has the problem. That's probably not getting into fixing my problem, but it is in a way. Because when the water goes underneath the road onto his property, it goes straight down, and then it should be making a right-hand turn, right? There was always a channel there that the town maintained many years ago. Then they didn't do it anymore. Now, all that water doesn't go directly down when we get heavy rain. It just raises and raises. As that water's holding, it's holding the water from me going through that pipe, and now it's building up. So the big pipe that we have, sometimes we have 4, 5, 6 inches above the pipe, and the other side of the brook is all sitting in water about that deep because there's no channel. And I have pictures of that too. That whole backyard has a foot of water, and those pipes are not even half full. And he is up in arms, so maybe you're gonna hear from him too.
All right, well, that's what we're here for. All right, thank you. Anything else? Any other comments from the commission? All right. All right, thank you for presenting to us. All right,
You're gonna let us know then, or?
no, there's nothing for us to let you know. If you want to do something about it, you have to fill out an application and bring it to us, and for us to give you a permission to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all this committee can do for you.
All right.
All right.
So then Denise, I could.
Yeah,
talk
you
to
can speak, you can go back in and speak to Denise. She'll help you through the application process.
Okay,
All right?
because that's what Ken was saying too. He said we can help you with that, the process of doing that. So that all, like I say, that all I want to do is do like they did it before, what Inland Wetlands said before, nothing more, nothing less. So it's a good flowing stream again.
All right. We understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. On to subdivision report recommendations to P and Z Commission. Nothing.
What time to, stop in tomorrow, Denise, or in the office, or
I should be in most of the day tomorrow.
tomorrow?
Yeah, I should be around.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Regulated activities, regular meeting, no public input. Then IWC 2019-11, 422 Fan Hill Road, current single-family home with associated site improvements, previously approved, I-05-14, application about to expire, continued from the last meeting.
Staff has not
Nothing.
heard
We have not heard from them.
anything from them since they,
So does this mean that their application expired?
no.
No, it expires, I think, February 20th, 2000. That's.
Right, yeah, no, it
Okay.
hasn't expired, but we will try again to contact them. Denise has you contacted Jay and we didn't get a response, so we'll try before the next meeting and see if we can get an update, whether they're withdrawing or submitting new information or,
Okay.
They have to submit new information,
yeah.
so I don't know if that's just what's taking, I don't know,
We don't, yeah, like I said, they've been,
silence.
So we just, all right,
yeah,
what do we do? Nothing, right?
right.
Moving on to be public hearings. IWC 2019-09, 17 Enterprise Drive, Delmedico, development of warehouse and office facility, continued from 9/25/19 and 10/9/19.
He's driving it.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I know Kevin knows his way around.
Yep.
Good evening, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Kevin Soley. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut with Soley Engineering. Office located at 501 Main Street here in Monroe. So we're here for the continuation of the application for 17 Enterprise Drive. This is phase 2 of the project. At the last hearing, we had submitted some revised plans and information. That was really kind of the only reason why we left the hearing open. We had gotten some additional very minor comments from the town engineer, and we wanted to provide a formal written response to Denise's comments, so we did drop those off earlier this week. I understand it's not normal practice to submit stuff so late in the process, but these were very, very insignificant minor changes, so I wanted to hopefully just have Russ Sear come up and just kind of give you a summary of what those changes were, and then see if there are any other kind of further comments or questions. One other item I do want to point out is that, for the record, we did, in response to Commissioner Spence's comments, have a meeting with the fire marshal and reviewed the building location, and we do have an email from Bill Davin saying that he's completely fine with the building as designed, and there's no issues from a fire department standpoint. So with that, I'll have Russ Sear come up and run through the changes. He thought he was getting off easy tonight.
Good evening, Russ Sear, professional engineer with Solely Engineering. So the town engineer's comments were, for the most part, had to do with our drainage calculations, and had very little to do with plan changes. He also gave us, we have an application for planning and zoning also. He gave us comments on those, and the plans represent a change with those comments too, and it's very minor also. So with the changes, all in all, consist of So he requested that an impervious liner be placed under the riprap spillway from the detention basin. Okay, we agreed to that. That was a change to the detail, has nothing to do with the plan. He requested that the riprap in that spillway be grouted. We agreed to that. No changes to the plan. He requested that a trash rack be added to the detention basin outlet control structure. So that would just a little trash rack over there at the orifices, no changes to the plan. He requested additional guide rail along the driveway, between the dumpster pad and where the parking starts. So that's one minor change. We increased the pipe slopes of 4 drainage pipes from 0.5% to 1%. Nothing on the surface, no change to the plan. He requested that we fit all catch basins with hooded outlets, which was intended anyway, but we added a note to the plan. And the only substantive change we made, which is actually a positive to this commission, is that we're showing that where the millings were placed in the conservation easement in back of the building, we're showing that area to be, the millings to be cleaned up and the area restored with grass. So that's really the only plan change that in this submission, this response package that you got yesterday. So. Any questions?
I know you submitted plans last week. I missed something on the last set of plans. There's an outdoor storage area that's in the upland review area that was added. I did not notice that until yesterday.
Yeah, that outdoor storage area was shown on the plans that we.
It was ones that you submitted the last meeting.
Yeah, correct.
But I was focused on 10, but it doesn't matter.
It was submitted at the last.
So I was focused on my stuff, so I did not see that until the other day.
Right.
Couple concerns with that. It's in the upland review area, but it's on top of the septic system and the reserve system. Now, I know that we're not privy to the health department, but you're putting
Right.
this load on top of a reserve system. So where's that reserve system going to go?
Right. The other, well, he's allowed to have up to 20% of his floor area. And what we're proposing, that area represents a little bit less than 20%. I forget the area right now. 50,
Yeah, septic system.
Yeah.
But it's,
So
and it always has to be
the
paved.
septic system is, you can see that half of the septic system is under the parking lot right here. Okay? This septic system is, I believe, has about 3 feet of cover on it and is concrete teepee galleries. And they're designed to handle H20 load, so we don't feel that that's going to be a problem.
With storage on top of it, it's gonna have to be paved too, you know. It can't be gravel.
The commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission can approve alternative surface treatments for some options. We've actually had approvals for 154 Enterprise Drive, for example. We have some outdoor storage.
I'm going by what was mentioned to me,
Oh,
is
I
that it
understand.
has to be contained, screened, and paved, so.
We understand.
So I'm hearing that and looking at it in terms of being in the upland review area, so that's why I just want to bring it out.
So that's the area there, right, okay.
Right. So it's proposed to be, we're proposing to put gravel on it. It's a relatively flat area. It's really the only area he's got available. It's fairly remote from the wetland. We're proposing to place gravel or processed material down and surround it with a stockade fence as required by zoning.
What is he
That will be
proposing?
used to,
I'm sorry. What is he proposing to store there?
the owner is an arborist, and as part of his business, he needs to temporarily store stumps and brush and things like that, dumpsters that he brings in, takes out.
Any machinery?
Excuse me?
Any machinery?
No, no.
He doesn't dump the
Dumpsters.
stuff and then pick them back up?
Yeah, he places the dumpster and picks it up, right. He's got them stored right now in an area in the center of the millings. Right there.
There's currently an outdoor storage area here, on this location, which is kind of used for the same.
Right, so we're transferring that area over to the side on the grass. It's a relatively flat area. It's really the only area available that he can have any area of substance.
Well, we would request, so we are,
Sorry, guys.
that is a great grade.
I've never heard that one.
It will come back. Sorry about that.
See, last week I wouldn't hear that because I got hearing aids on time.
So P and Z has approved, you said it approved this?
No, so
No.
we're going to planning and zoning. We have a planning and zoning hearing actually tomorrow night, the opening of that process. So we have proposed this to be gravel, and the Planning and Zoning Commission does have the authority to approve alternative surface treatment. So that's what we're going to request from them. What I would ask this commission, if the commission sees this as acceptable, and we'd like to do this as asphalt, if the Planning and Zoning Commission requires that it be paved, we'd like this commission to, I guess, allow that to happen without having us to come back before you to modify the approval. So just provide us that.
So you're asking us to approve the alternative parking area, whether it's gravel or asphalt.
Yes.
Now, I'm assuming that this is going to be pitched in, so the water goes into the pump, where's the watershed for that?
So currently, it does slightly pitch towards the rear, but we could certainly modify that to ensure that any and all runoff from that is modified to come into our site. We'd be happy to make
I think
that.
that makes the most,
Yeah.
If anybody else has any other questions about it, at least that way it's going into the treatment that's designed and not heading towards the wetlands, right? Okay, anybody on my left here have any comments?
I still,
Denise,
So I can talk through about the septic.
yeah, I mean, I'm just,
Yeah,
I know it's not our purview, but if I understand correctly, and Jim can maybe, they're proposing something on top of the reserve system, a load on top of the reserve system. My education-wise was, you can't put anything on top of a reserve system.
Well, I think, there's definitely a health code that.
Right, and
that's
I know that-
followed,
I know they still
but
have to
I
get
know that there's
approval,
plenty
but-
of septic systems underneath parking lots all over the place.
Yes,
And
this is reserve system.
Reserve, but if the reserves,
If the
most of the
reserve is
primaries.
compromised, where are we gonna put it if we
Well,
don't have much
That's up to them,
room?
he's gotta dig it up and
A
put it in.
reserve area is only necessary until the primary system is in place.
I understand, but you can't
One-
change the natural state, you can't put a load on it. This is gonna call for a load.
Actually, most reserve systems for shopping centers that are established in parking lots are paved over and do experience loads on top and above those reserve system areas. But we're
Yeah.
certainly, we're happy to comply with all
Yeah, like I
appropriate
said, it's out of our
requirements.
peruse, but
Yeah.
it's just, I know the health department hasn't looked at this stuff yet.
We had extensive meetings with the health department prior to.
Well, that person's not around anymore, and so the new person is getting up to speed on it, and these are some of the things. that
So are
they
you
were-
telling us something that hasn't been shared with us, but it's been discussed internally with staff?
No, what
Oh,
I'm
okay.
saying is that, I know the test pits were done, but that was under the previous sanitarian. They're not around anymore. When I was trying to ask about the reserve system, the new health person has not looked at the plans. So I'm just saying, they haven't looked at them, so that's all I'm getting at.
Well, there's certainly a number of things that well, first of all, we'll certainly coordinate with the new sanitarian now that, are they on board
Yes,
now?
yeah.
Because we went through this with Rich, and then I think we even discussed it with Ed Napick when he was
Yeah,
on for
no,
that
we have-
brief
there's-
time as an overlap, but if the new person is actually
Someone's here full-time
officially
now,
started,
yeah.
we're certainly happy to go through that. There are a number of things that we can do to actually protect those reserve soils, even if we were interested in bringing in outdoor storage on top of it. So we're happy to do anything that the health department's gonna require in order to maintain that, to maintain that area.
Yeah, I'm just looking, like, that way we think ahead, because we know we're in the reserve area, we're in the upland review area. Where else would it go if they're not?
I think we intend to maintain that to be the reserve area, and there are things that we can put in place from a construction standpoint that'll maintain that as a reserve area, even if we were to introduce the storage above it.
I would install the reserve area because it's under the parking lot.
Yeah, I know, I'm
So
just,
that, you never have to dig it up in the future.
Right.
But that's completely up to the property owner. But I guess, we could, I've seen it plenty of times, reserve under a parking lot. So, and again, like you said, I understand what you're saying, you don't want to impact the soil, but this happens all over the place.
and I'm trying not to have, them have to come back again because of a change. I'm just trying to make sure everyone's on the same page, thinking ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else on the right? Anything to say?
I noticed all the utilities moved. Why did they move?
Part of it had to do with the rest of the utility locations?
Changing which?
Utility locations.
Oh, so in the yeah, it's a P. That one, the bottom. All right, so in the process of the building, floor plan was evolved to the point where they decided that, it's on the end.
What happened, it's not coming in.
All right, here. So initially, we had the utilities all coming in the front. They're already stubbed up to here. Gas is stubbed to here, water is stubbed to here, electric is stubbed to here. And we were initially going to show them in the front, coming into the front. But the floor plan, the architect liked to have a utility room on the side. Utility is going to come in over here, on the side here, so it makes sense for the utilities to enter that at that point.
How come this developed like 3/4 of the way through the process? All of a sudden, the architect changes his mind?
Well, part of the problem is with the wetland submission, as we go through building design, we're required to provide floor plans and elevations as part of the planning and zoning process. And unfortunately, the architect in this instance, he was modifying the plan as we went through the process, and then what the final solution was from a building layout to optimize the building construction. That was the,
That's
So
all
there-
still under parking lot, right?
It's all underground utilities.
It's all under, it's not changing any type of the activity on the property. It's just, it's long, if anything, it's more work, they gotta go farther.
Right.
It's not in the wetlands, it's underneath what's gonna be paved.
It's just pushing it.
I don't know, it just seems kind of silly to me. I have more questions. Okay, I guess, well, I did have a request, and actually, I think Denise had actually kind of requested this, but it never happened. We would like wetland markers along the east to west margin.
Okay.
They're not marked on the plans, they need to be put on there.
we're happy to add wetland markers as a condition of approval.
The other questions, I believe, go to Mr. McManus. Yes. Hi.
Hi.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. For the record, James McManus, certified professional soil scientist, Chairman Wetland Consulting Services with offices in Newtown.
I got all of this new stuff here, it's like it's confusing in there. On the planting plan, I noticed that you have, did you do the planting plan?
No,
It was done,
too solely.
okay,
I looked at it.
you looked at it, okay. Because it seems to me, we always like to see only native plants,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe there's two on there that are non-natives.
Yeah.
The Japanese Andromeda and the Japanese holly.
Okay,
Can we replace them with something native, please?
sure.
What would you suggest?
Do we have that plan handy? Okay.
Yep. It's not at this point, so. Yeah, it should be out
The restoration.
Oh, I think, okay, yep. I think those are part of just the upland plantings, not necessarily part of the wetland restoration plantings. So that was the sheet, but yeah, there were.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was just
Yeah.
looking at the whole plant schedule, I didn't.
Yeah,
So,
that was.
so we actually have two plants scheduled, one on 2.61, which is kind of all the upland plants.
Mhm.
Then we have a second
Right, I see.
plan, which is the, wetland mitigation, which has the plan schedules for plants within the wetlands. So, but I can show you where the other ones are on the sheets.
So which one's the Japanese hollies and the Japanese,
Andromeda.
Andromedas?
Andromeda.
Those are from the other plantings, now, we're not concerned with that now, right?
Well, it's still in our upland review, so yes, we are concerned with that. And they're
Oh.
non-natives, so they're not what we prefer.
We can replace those, that's fine. Yeah, we had some on this slope here, so it wasn't nothing we were having something.
Yeah.
There's something to do with something made.
We could put gray dogwood, we could put maybe bayberry.
Okay, well, just give us the list so we
Sure.
can, so we have something to put on the plan.
Okay.
And, because we do need it on the plan,
Yep.
or it doesn't count.
So it's the compact Japanese holly and the
Mhm.
Japanese Andromeda that we're having to, now those are both just shrubs.
Yep.
In a container, we're having to modify those. Might as well take something else that we already have.
Right.
We have 6 Japanese holly, we have 4 Andromedas, and we have a number of other options here, so we can just move it around. Yeah.
Yeah, we can figure that out. Yeah, the plants I would add are already there. I just increase the numbers on some of those.
We'll replace those with other native shrubs
Yeah.
of comparable size
Right.
and quality that are currently proposed as part of the landscape plan.
Right, we'll just remove those two, and then my recommendation is remove the two shrubs that you don't like, and we'll just increase the numbers of the shrubs that are native.
Okay, but we
Good.
still need more
We're gonna tell you which-
specifics in
we're
order.
gonna
Do you
tell
have
you
a
which
preference of which one? No, we'll tell her now. So we
Okay.
can finish. Would you have a preference of which of the other plant
I'm
materials
not the
that we're currently
professional.
proposing?
Well,
I am only a
You're
witness.
just asking, that you're asking that the plan be noted where the ones are being
That's,
replaced.
yes, we need to know
She
that.
wants to know exactly
Just change
which
a little,
ones.
well, they're all spec'd out by location, right? We have each location?
Yep.
So just change the coding.
No,
The key?
I believe Lois is, I believe Commissioner Spence is requesting to know precisely which plants we're going to be swapping those out.
Yes, because
Yes.
that's the only way our staff can go out and say, okay, this
Yeah, he's gonna
was
change,
done
he's gonna
properly.
take, if there was 4 of the one you don't like, he's gonna increase the gray dogwood, say, by the 4, and add the total quantity of plants is gonna be exactly the same at the bottom when they add them up, right? And he's just gonna remove 2 plants out of that list, the ones that you don't like, but the total number is gonna be the same, and he's gonna go and take the code, the keys, and change the keys on the plan to remove the ones that you don't like, and show that the ones that you do like are going in and replaced, correct?
That's correct. I think she's looking for which plant specifically we're going to be modifying, replacing those with.
bayberry,
Yeah, like
northern
you said, you're gonna
bayberry.
increase, you're gonna.
No, no, I
No,
know.
no.
She wants
She
to know
wants to
know
which
which-
right now.
Right species,
That we're going to
northern,
increase the count of bayberries and.
northern
what other-
bayberry and gray dogwood,
Yes.
There you
to,
We're going to replace those with.
to accommodate the loss of those other 2 shrubs. We'll increase those shrub numbers.
Okay.
I was simply asking if she had, of the plant list, if there was one that you predicted.
Well, actually, I never see elderberry on there, and I happen to like elderberry as plants, but I'm, like I said, I'm not a landscape architect. Okay. In the basin, it says that they're wetland plants, according to the planting plan. But you testified at the last hearing that the bottom of the basin is going to be raised about 2 feet. I think it was 2 feet. I don't remember exactly what the amount, above the wetland line, above the wetland depth. Are these plants going to survive if they are that much further away from the wetland soils?
Well, I would, I don't recall exactly what the basin bottom, is that going to be a wet bottom?
It's not a wet bottom. It's designed to drain out, over a 48-hour period.
Okay.
We did have plugs in that location, milkweed, sedge, and ivy.
Well, then, if it's saturated on a regular basis, those plants will survive. Because that's what they grow in now. Seasonally,
Well,
all
what's-
those 3 like saturated conditions on a more than usual basis, and then they don't mind
But
getting
they'll
their
be
feet.
on fill. I mean, what are
Nah,
you
it's-
putting on the bottom of this basin?
Topsoil.
Yeah.
It's all topsoil?
It's gonna be
And they'll
topsoil, so
survive
things
in
will grow.
topsoil.
You're not gonna
Okay.
stick it, yeah, on
Just
it.
checking.
Okay.
Okay. In the wetland finger, that where you're doing the restoration.
Yeah.
Why are you restoring a wetland that isn't being affected?
It's enhancement.
It's an enhancement to offset the
Offset.
proposed disturbance that we are
Yeah.
proposing. And I think.
But what's in the, what's in there now? Is it that devoid of vegetation that it needs restoration?
No,
So
it's
you're just adding
it's-
something for the
I'm
sake
just
of adding
adding something to better buffer the wetland. Because if you go out there now, it's the most disturbed part of the wetland boundary is right there now, and then we're going to do even more work, so I'm just adding a little bit of a buffer. We're trying to offset the building of the basin where the temporary old detention pond was located.
How
So
are you
by doing that, I added some plants there. I'm taking out some of the upland enhancement. I'm taking out the olive and adding other upland shrubs. We're adding a little bit there, just to increase the wetland buffer and have some more wildlife shrub. Detention pond, the existing pond out in front, we're taking out the purple loosestrife and such and replanting that. So those are sort of the things on a limited site where
You
I
were
could
planting
find,
the front basin?
well, we're gonna take out the invasives and just redo it.
But that's the first time I've heard of that.
That's what we,
This was presented at the last hearing.
yeah.
Was it the front basin?
Yeah, those are
Oh,
our,
yeah, long
Because he
ago.
was telling us he was removing the invasives that are in the front of the building, and down
Okay,
the side.
I missed it.
right. So those are, we have limited
Yeah.
opportunity to do this, just based on the condition of the site today. So those are the four things I kind of came up with.
Yeah, I kind of put the charge to, listen, we're proposing an impact of a regulated wetland, and I wanted to make sure that what we put before this commission was reflective of that and provided adequate, mitigation elsewhere on the site.
So we were limited in space, because there was no reason to go into the wetland itself. It's fine. And we're not
I
going.
was hoping for more of a buffer, and all the disturbed upland that is around that basin, I was hoping of more of an edge buffer, other
Well-
than just the seed mix. that you're
Well, there are
proposing.
shrubs, as you can see, right
But
there.
they're like, what, 15 feet away from the edge of the disturbance, at least. There's nothing that's right along the edge.
There's really nothing along the edge right now either. I mean, that's where the basin is. I mean, that's open canopy there,
We could certainly shift some of these plants along this berm to be closer to the edge.
closer to the edge. Remember, that existing old detention pond is an open canopy hole. There is no canopy over it. So we're building another open canopy. And we're planting shrubs along the edge of the slope, the new slope.
Commissioner, any other questions?
Yes. One of the things, I was perusing, I don't know why, our regs. And one of the things it says is that we need to pursue alternatives. Now, we did talk alternatives very briefly, and then you said the alternative of using this in the front stormwater basin was too expensive, and that using a subsurface detention system was too expensive, therefore making it imprudent. However, that does not satisfy the statute. Just you saying it's got to be fully investigated, fully vetted, and if there is even a possibility of a feasible and prudent alternative, we technically, by regs, have to say no. So I would like to have some good alternatives presented. Prove us wrong. No, we don't have to prove ourselves wrong. You have to prove yourselves right in order to get this approval. And whenever there's direct impact to a wetland, be it man-made or natural, we're not supposed to say yes unless
Mr.
there
Chairman,
is
point of
no
order.
feasible and prudent alternative.
Point of order. At the point of order, you immediately stop the conversation. Mr. Chairman, the commissioner, I do not believe is correct, and I think that she's putting out an opinion that is not technically correct whatsoever, and I think that she should be careful about opinion versus legal point of view, so I think we're off track.
I think she's.
I think you
looking
should look it up in the regs before you make that kind of assumption.
Right now, let's let her present her evidence that she's, that this is, I do know that there's an alternative thing, although about the alternative, I'm not sure about if it's mandated that we actually get them. But while you're looking for that, can they respond to your comment?
Well, I won't be able to listen very well if
Well-
I'm looking.
There's certainly a requirement of the regs to provide alternative analysis. We did, in accordance with the regulations and state statutes, provide and submit alternatives that could be contemplated on
No,
this
that's
site.
not it.
And during the last hearing, we did talk about the feasibleness and the prudency of those alternatives. I'd be happy to go through those again in detail, but I do believe we've met the requirement in the information that we've provided, and I'd also like to point out that throughout this hearing, there's been no evidence entered into the record contradicting anything that we've presented as professionals for this application.
Actually, I can stop you there because we have two professionals, one who's sitting here and our town engineer, who both recommended a subsurface detention system for this thing. And to just for the record, 10.3 of our regs, in the cases of an application which included a public hearing pursuant to a decision by the commission that the proposed activity may have a significant impact on wetlands or water courses, a permit shall not be issued, not may, shall not be issued unless the commission finds on the basis of the record that a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's,
Unfair.
I'm taking it right out
And-
of statute.
and again, as part of-
Misunderstand. I'm not disputing the regulation, I'm disputing the point that she was trying to make, that it has to be proven with it beyond some sort of reasonable doubt, that the alternatives weren't there.
I do remember
May I,
the-
if I can have the floor for a minute? I will go a bit further, because I asked the question very clearly at the last meeting, why it wasn't possible as an alternative to augment the original basin. And that was an alternative, which I did ask the applicant, and they did address it, that it wasn't possible, or that it was less feasible, less protective of the wetlands to augment the system that was already there rather than to rebuild, fill it and rebuild. So I think that they have presented suitable alternatives, and to as for us to deliberate, not for us to opinionize, we can decide later whether they've done it prudently.
I agree. I think that, yes, they did present some alternatives. This is in this plan that we're doing is for their, is not a bad plan. It's done properly. Are there other alternatives? Yes, they've explained them. I guess the only thing I could offer as a suggestion at this point is that you briefly go through the alternatives and tell us why we should choose this one that you're presenting versus the other one. And I guess then we can take it to deliberations and, see what everybody, wants. Does that make sense? Seem right?
He certainly has the right to do that.
So briefly.
So, sure, briefly. So again, we certainly understand that there's been staff comments about looking at doing underground detention instead of providing above-ground detention. As we presented at the last hearing, the additional cost of underground detention is considerable, which affects the prudency of that alternative. And frankly, as we've presented to the commission, given this site's unique situation and the wetlands that we're proposing to be impacted, again, these wetlands are there because when this site was originally approved, it had a sedimentation basin in this location. That basin was excavated, and it should have been filled in at the conclusion of the phase 1 construction. It was not. Because it was left in that state, wetlands plants became evident, and it now meets the definition of a regulated wetland. We acknowledge that. We've included in our application materials that we are proposing a direct wetland impact, but given the uniqueness of how that wetland was established, we felt that this proposed plan was a feasible and prudent alternative. In fact, the most feasible and prudent alternative to encourage development on this property. And we frankly are requesting this commission for approval for that. And that's all we can do is propose something to this commission. If the commission as a whole doesn't agree with our proposal, we certainly understand that that's the case. And that's why we've had multiple hearings. That's why we go through this ongoing discussion and we engage the commission in dialogue, and we look for feedback from the public or anyone else who has concerns or comments. And we feel that, again, this is the most feasible and prudent alternative. I can talk about the alternative across the street. You have a municipal detention basin which is not maintained by the municipality that is charged to maintain it. As part of the application for All-Star Transportation on that property, there was significant analysis and investigation regarding how that basin is proposed to be maintained. Issues with the town engineer regarding volumes and things like that, which was thankfully resolved as part of the conclusion of All-Star Transportation. But frankly, we did not want to open that can of worms again as part of this application, because it wasn't a feasible or prudent alternative for us to look at expanding a basin off-site, off of our property to accommodate additional runoff from this site, when we had a perfectly reasonable method of containing and maintaining our stormwater patterns consistent with how they're currently exist on our property. So again, rather than having and proposing additional discharge on an off-site location, which would require additional off-site improvements, we limited and were able to design our site so it was entirely contained within the limits of 17 Enterprise Drive.
Now, so underground storage was an alternative. Under the parking lot, obviously, is the only spot, right?
Yes.
So could you, maybe this might help the commission, if you were able to blow that up, showing all the utility layout, and maybe point out if there's even room for, the way you have it laid out, for something that's efficient underground. I mean, I see it's a pretty busy, utility layout. Just so that maybe that might
Sure.
help.
Yeah, so there are a lot of utilities. We do have utilities serving a second building on a property, which means we have to make all those connections. We have separation requirements from our septic tank and our septic and our pump station, from the septic system. From here, we're bringing this back over the existing septic system on this side. So from an architectural standpoint, from a building efficiency and design standpoint, it was better to provide the utility room on the side of a building rather than along the front, which would impact kind of front of house operations. When you walk into a building, there's typically, those are the front doors, so trying to cram in a utility room along that front facade, it impacts the ability to provide windows, it impacts the ability to provide a better aesthetic for the internal occupants of that facility. And frankly, trying to bring all the utilities to the other side of the building would require extensive impact into an existing hill that's rather steep and stabilized by riprap. So trying to bring all those utilities around to this side to get onto this side would cause considerable disturbance and additional excavation required, and then restoration on this side of the property, which we were trying to avoid as part of the development of this property.
Let me ask my question.
No, and so with all that, we have very limited room to actually provide a large underground detention system without having conflicts with all these utilities, without substantially impacting
Where does the current pavement end right now?
Here.
Right there, that's the old pavement line. So anything going above that would require him to repave a parking lot that's already completely done and finished.
And also considerably impact the ongoing operations of an existing facility.
Okay, so really the only spot is that one little spot to the left, right there. That would be about it, right?
And in this location is, as you can see, there are some higher bedrock, higher rock in this area. So to over-excavate to provide a large wholesale underground detention system would also add considerable cost to the project.
And then on a wetland side of things, what I was trying to achieve with having an above-ground detention area and to really putting back in place what was supposed to be one 12 years ago or so, was to make it not only kind of a dual system. It takes care of the runoff, but also turn it into a bit of a better wetland than what we have obviously today, which is just a hole in the ground. So that's why I wanted plants on the bottom, plant the slopes. So not only do you have some habitat for wildlife and other plants, it's almost, we're building a wetland. So my goal was not only put everything underground, but primary, if you look at the drainage manual, that's a primary system. It's always better to put stuff above ground, and we're making a wetland. So that, on my aspect, that's what I was trying to do. Now, there's also engineering and financial considerations, but that was my consideration.
So back to the plan where that area was, where there was nothing to the left by the riprap. So that's, what's the under, there's another plate. That's you said that's ledge there,
There is high rock, yes, in this area.
in this area. Okay, so if you ended up putting it there, wouldn't you end up having a lot of overflow discharge if it wasn't, if you try to fit it all into one area in the parking lot and it's not big enough or the drainage isn't good enough, you're gonna end up overflowing into or having to do some kind of mixed thing?
Well,
where-
one of the other benefits of having an above-ground basin in the location that we're proposing it is that it allows for some exfiltration and groundwater recharge. We're not modeling it in that way, we're not, contemplating a lot, but it does allow for some groundwater recharge. If we were to provide an underground detention system in an area where there's ledge, we're not gonna have that same opportunity. And all that stormwater, the full volume of that stormwater is then gonna come out of there and go into for more of a direct wetland discharge. This again provides an open, an open system from a stormwater standpoint to help that. And I think just generally, with an above-ground system, long-term, you can see how it functions during storm events. You can get in there and maintain it. Oftentimes, when you propose underground detention system within a parking lot, the maintenance on those systems is lacking. And that's, despite our best efforts as engineers to remind our clients that you have to do these every 2 years, you gotta go in, you gotta take out any sediment and things like that. Sometimes that falls on deaf ears. So underground systems, while they're certainly a great technological advancement in dealing with stormwater, so to speak, oftentimes the overall performance degrades over time as the maintenance doesn't happen. And because it's out of sight, it's out of mind.
Any other comments from commissioners?
No. Thanks for all mine, thank you.
Anybody here in favor of this application?
Oh, we should ask Denise if all of
Oh,
her,
did
we
I
have an
miss
agent who had,
We did provide, and I will comment again, oh, sorry, good catch. Wow.
I play baseball.
I will just say we did also include, there were comments about the conservation easement markers. Those weren't, we didn't mean to confuse everybody.
Yeah,
I
that really
apologize
confused.
for that. But as part of phase one of this project that we had to go through, we recently went through planning and zoning to bring phase one into compliance to get the certificate of occupancy for this building. And as part of that, we went and actually filed the conservation easement, which was never done after original approvals. And we also installed conservation easement markers all along the limit of the conservation easement. We submitted the phase one plan because those markers were shown in their entirety. And it was, I know it was confusing because they were both called site layout plan, they were both labeled 2.11.
That's what threw me. That's what
I
threw me.
know,
I was like,
and I
what
knew I wanted to clear that up. Just because in phase two, we didn't provide a map of the overall, so you couldn't see the overall extent of where these markers went in. But these conservation easement markers have been installed in accordance with phase one. So those do exist. And again, to Commissioner Spence's request, we're happy to add additional wetland markers as well along this edge.
okay. And our normal procedure is a 3-year monitoring plan on plantings. Okay.
Denise, anything? No?
No, I think most of mine would be answered.
Did you have enough chance to
No,
understand the
I-
new changes that were
No, I
provided
really, I
tonight?
didn't have time to fully look at it. I just noticed the one quick thing and threw a quick email to Russ about it yesterday.
Would you like more time to go through and, because technically, you're supposed to have them in-house for several days before the hearing, and so is the availability to the public, in case there is any.
So the substantive changes have been in since the last hearing, so well over 2 weeks ago. Minor changes that we dropped off yesterday, hopefully those are, we understand.
Yeah, and I mean, engineering hasn't had a chance to review their stuff yet either.
But that wouldn't have an
No, I'm
impact
just
on
saying.
us, right?
No, I'm just saying,
But
so
they would do that for the
he's
PNZ.
gonna have to do it for pizza anyway, so.
Okay.
But no, I mean, he knows about the markers, knows about the billings, so those were really the last comments of mine that hadn't been addressed,
Okay.
so.
Is there anybody here that want to speak in favor of this application? Anybody here like to speak opposed to this application? Anybody want to say something about this application in general nature? don't think so, anybody here to do that. Okay, I know the answer to the questions on it. Okay, so we're gonna move this into.
Mr. Chairman?
Nope.
She has
Wait,
to-
I read the
I'm sorry.
exhibits.
What? Oh, the exhibits, yes.
So at the last meeting, let's see, we read up to Exhibit 12. So Exhibit 13 were updated wetland agent comments by Denise Halsted. The revision date was October 10th, 2019. Exhibit 14 was updated in town engineer comments by Scott Schatzline. Revision date was October 16th. Exhibit 15 was a response to inland wetland agent comments and a 3-sheet plan set by Russell Sear of Solely Engineering, and the document was dated October 22nd. Exhibit 16 was an engineering report by Russell Sear of Solely Engineering. The revision date was October 21st, 2019. Exhibit 17 was a 7-sheet plan set by Solely Engineering. There were various dates, but the revision date was October 22nd, 2019. Exhibit 18 was a response to the town engineering comments by Russell Sear Solely Engineering. The document was dated October 21st, 2019. And Exhibit 19 is the comment from the fire marshal, Marshal Bill Davins, and the document was dated October 16th, 2019. And that's the end of those.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I move that we close the public hearing on this application and that we place it on the agenda for deliberation this evening if time permits.
Okay. That's good, Rosa?
Second.
Second. Second. Second, Commissioner Stewart. All right, move this to deliberations.
All in favor?
Oh, yeah.
You can close the public.
What? Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss something?
Well, they were supposed to have done it earlier if they wanted to do it, so.
No, we're good.
Yeah.
I think we,
So you just need to vote. Just make
All
sure.
right, vote.
Yeah, you always let us
Everyone in
talk
favor of,
last.
moving this to deliberation, what?
you always let us talk last.
Oh, so speak.
We appreciate the commission's consideration of the application. Thank you.
Okay, now, we all in favor of moving to deliberation?
Aye.
Aye.
So,
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving it to deliberation.
did everybody vote?
Did I think so? Right?
I don't know, I'm getting blank stares from the other end. Everybody vote?
I,
Okay, I just want to make sure, I just was
It's
checking.
dark over there.
I know, and I don't, let me put my glasses on so I can make eye contact.
Right over
Sorry
you,
about
Russ,
that.
it's dark.
Okay.
I don't know why.
You're absorbing all the light in the room, Russ.
So,
On to enforcement, A, NOV discussions, nothing, B, remediation submissions. Do we start with the web circle one? Or do we,
No, so you got in your packets.
are we doing Cold Spring first?
Yes,
Okay, it's IWB-2019-03, 48 Cold Spring Road, unpermitted structure and debris in regulated area. Remediation submission due 10/16/19.
hold on, let me get my,
You sent us the letter.
yes, I did. So we got a request from South of Dorkland asking that they would like a delay for 3 weeks. There was a delay by 3 weeks in completing the mapping. They now have the mapping, and they're meeting with Mr. Saban on October 17th. They are asking for an extension. They said they would submit no later than November 4th.
And I had a meeting with the engineer today regarding the submittal.
Okay, and was there any update on that?
No, we just went through what our notice of decision was on the NOV and just make sure that he checks and takes care of everything that we had asked in the submittal.
Okay.
I'll move that we grant the extension.
second.
So we got a motion to grant the extension from Commissioner Spence and a second by Commissioner Weinberg. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention.
Abstentions?
Observation by half.
I like it, I
All
like
right,
it.
motion
New
passes.
words.
half assassination, so it's probably appropriate.
We're gonna work on names.
So we'll have to have a circle
All right.
here.
Application hearing determinations, done.
Oh, wait,
Oh,
there's
City
that
Web
one.
Circle.
More.
Oh, that's Web Circle. I thought
Yep.
that was,
Now
No,
have
we
Web.
just did Cold Spring,
I'm sorry.
and now we're gonna do IWV 2019-05.
Now we're at 244 Web Circle.
Correct. So we received a letter from Mr. Gonzalez, who asked that they'd like an extension until the next meeting of November 13th, as the plans are not ready. They are also working with Spath Joklin on this
And I also had
remediation submission.
Also discussed that with them this morning.
I move that we grant the extension as stated.
Motion to grant the extension, you have a second? Second by Commissioner Stewart. Everybody,
Any discussion?
any
You get to it from- Okay, I'm sorry, Jim Weinberg, you made the
I vote
motion?
yeah.
motion,
And the second was by Jim Stewart?
yes. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I
Any
oppose.
oppositions? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
Okay.
Now we're moving along to application hearings and deliberations, which are none. No others now.
Not yet. It's coming.
The Century, is that what you want?
Hold on one second, what did I just do with myself? So, what,
No, are we on this one?
yes, so now we are on deliberations.
Deliberation, yes.
Okay. So, I guess you can talk about 17 Enterprise now, and, you know, we're gonna request a draft approval, or whatever
Yes,
the
we do
commission
17
feels.
Enterprise now, so.
I would make a motion that we direct the staff to write a motion of approval with conditions.
Second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Stewart, second by Commissioner Weinberg. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could I ask the commissioner what conditions that he wants to put in there?
I would say our standard list of conditions, and I was interested in hearing what commissioners also had to say.
So, the conditions I had written so far was about the native plantings, the revising of the plant list, the outdoor storage to drain away from wetlands, and 3-year monitoring. That much I had gotten earlier.
And the markers along the
And the
And,
wetlands.
which is
That's
still one of
already
the,
in
west.
place.
yeah,
That's
which
already-
is still one of the
East
ones
to west ones are
outstanding,
not.
yeah.
The north and south ones were.
Any other
So,
I
comments?
think that was, everything else I think was included in the back and forth with staff already approved.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like to just say, for the record, I was actually, I'll try to be funny about it. You know, we throw pronouns around loosely in this day and age, and the commissioner earlier said we need certain plants. You know, to me, the plants that were being taken off are absolutely fine. I have no issue with them. I don't know why we would say that we need only native plants in a program. And in fact, I would leave it to the landowner who has the most to gain or lose by what he does with his property to do it the correct way. Having said that, I have no objection, since the applicant had no objection to changing, but I just want for the record to say, I'm not part of that we, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
But may I
You,
counter?
Commissioner Spence, yes. You can
Now it's
comment, and then I'll-
deliberation, you can do all you
But-
want.
Thank you
You know,
so much. The reason we
Go through it.
prefer,
No, some
well,
commissioners.
actually, P and Z also prefers native plants, and I've
Whoa,
sat through
remember, I
as many
sat
meetings
there
as
on
you
the
have.
P&Z, and I
I've been
argued
out
there too.
Yes, I know,
All
and
right.
they still prefer native plants. The reasoning being, especially in in our regulated area, native plants provide food, they provide nesting sites, and they provide shelter. Now, non-natives will provide shelter, but they will not provide food necessarily, and they will not provide nesting sites necessarily, because our native birds do not They will not nest in a Japanese Andromeda. I have never seen a bird nest in a Japanese Andromeda.
It's not for a dispute, I understand. your point of
Yes, it
view,
is,
but
actually, because
I-
habitat and everything that fits into the wetlands
Thank you,
category.
commissioners.
So this is why we always ask for native plants, and we don't like white pines.
That's a pat on the back.
Get that on the table right away.
As far as I'm concerned, if it's on a list and it's approved by, the governing bodies, it's just nonsense.
I would go further, that it's not in our bailiwick to be making those decisions. But
Yeah.
since the
Well,
applicant
if it-
agreed to do it, I have no objection.
I look
to
at
it.
it, then I know these licensed landscape architects probably do these plans. I don't
Well,
know if
actually,
you
we're
do much-
supposed to ask for the credentials of the people that draw up the plans per our regs.
Is it on the plan?
It was not.
Is it listed?
It was not. There was no,
Okay, I'm not leaving the meeting, I'm just.
oh, I looked, I did not see, maybe I didn't look carefully enough, but
Well, we'll know that in a second.
What about the,
he's gonna prove me wrong.
referral?
I can tell by the look on his face, he says, I'm gonna get her.
So,
Was, oh, we didn't get to that part, that's fine, okay. This is 17 inches.
All right, so we've got
Okay,
that
is
done.
there any,
Kevin, I know Kevin's looking up something for.
Mary Blackburn is a licensed landscape architect. She's our landscape architect.
Okay, would you tell her no more non-natives? Thank you. Let's just solve it right off the bat.
any other discussion on this? Any discussion on this side?
No.
We're all set?
There's no more conditions that you want added,
Any more conditions for anybody?
other than the standard?
others that weren't mentioned?
Other than the standard conditions.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve plans with conditions.
No,
For
we're
a
gonna-
draft.
For a draft.
To draft a letter of
For,
approval.
yes,
And,
So I think it's up for a vote. We
yes.
have-
Second.
We have a
Yeah.
first, we have a second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Anybody choose not to vote?
Yeah. Any abstentions? Did I say that wrong? What's wrong with me?
Wait, I should have said this before, the, reasons?
Oh, our reasons.
Thank you.
You just voted, so.
Findings, yes, findings, yeah.
The commission finds that the submitted application materials are consistent with the requirements as set forth by the current Town of Monroe Inland Wetlands and Watercourses regulations and the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Act pursuant to sections 22A-36 to 22A-45, inclusive of the Connecticut General Statutes as amended.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Is that
Okay,
finished?
yes, so you can finalize your, it's all,
Okay, motion passes.
okay. For the draft, okay.
Now we're doing,
54 Black Road.
IWC 2019-10, 54 Jockey Hollow Road, Town of Monroe Emergency Services, addition and renovation to existing EMS building and associated site improvements.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the letter written by staff with one amendment, which is to delete all text following the signature of the chairman.
Hold on one second, let me get my thing out.
Give me a second, please.
We have a motion from Commissioner Weinberg. Do you have a second?
Oh, it's
Yeah,
coming
go.
up.
He said, I think he said the motion is to accept the letter with everything after the
Deleting
chairman's signature.
everything
deleted.
following the chairman's signature on the letter. You can't discuss until you get a second, so.
Yeah.
Should we everything after the signature?
Do you have a second?
Huh?
I'm confused.
Second on the motion, or does anybody want to look first?
What is
I'm
the,
confused.
what was the motion? I'm
We
sorry.
can't discuss the motion until we get a second.
Second.
I didn't hear what the motion
I-
was.
I-
It
I-
doesn't
Now it's
say
over for
it.
discussion.
I'm still in the motion, so.
Okay.
I made a motion that we accept the letter as written, deleting all text following the chairman's signature.
So,
The commission is well aware that these letters are letters of the commission. They're not intended to be letters of staff. We have, Monroe happens to be one of the very few towns that has this type of a letter format, and I think that we need to start looking at moving more toward what we do in Trumbull and Newtown and all these surrounding towns. This letter, a commission's letter can be as simple as, "Dear Mr. Applicant, reference application number so-and-so, dated so-and-so, we approve your application as submitted, regards."
Do whatever you
Of
want.
course, that changes when you have conditions and that type of thing, and that should be on there. But a letter,
Copy that letter.
sorry, I still have the floor.
I have, would you like?
I have
a
the
copy?
floor,
Let him finish,
please.
please. Sorry.
I'm sorry. We have to start looking at how we do these things and try to get more in conformance with the way they should be done or the way they are done in every other town in Connecticut. So I strongly suggest we start there. There's another reason, which is as a letter from the commission, the chairman's supposed to sign it. He can't sign in the middle of the letter. He is, if we are going to have all of that, the chairman should be signing everything, and then the chairman owns that letter, and everything on that letter. So that's why I want to start reviewing these a little bit closer, thinking about it, and seeing if we can't move to more regularity in regard to these letters. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does anybody have a copy of that letter?
Absolutely.
That's
There you go. Anybody else would like one?
Please.
Yeah, they were emailed. There you go.
Basically, what Jim is referring to is all of our standard conditions, where this letter has evolved over the last 10 or 15 years.
Because I didn't mail it.
so get rid of the pre-construction, get rid of all the standard
No, he's
conditions.
getting rid of it.
But that's, I mean, that's what's beyond the
I could
signature.
not disagree more. We could move the chairman's signature, I think, but I could not disagree
Clarify,
more.
can I
Or maybe we
clarify
can
for a
make
second? Excuse me, are you saying that all this stuff should be moved, the signature line should just be moved to the end of the document?
No, he's saying it should also.
I'm asking, yes, I'm asking Commissioner Weinberg if that's what he's suggesting.
Mr. Chairman, I am saying two things. Number one, the letter is far too complicated. These are not supposed to include all of these things. The problem we have in this town is that we put down a lot of conditions like this without understanding what we have here. This is a project, as the town attorney, or as the presenters, I should say, last meeting presented, this is something going forward. There's no 20 days and then they have to come back to us for an approval on something. I think we're putting in this far too much. A letter of acceptance is very, very simple. You either meet the regulations and you do it, or you do with the modifications we ask. That's it. All the other nonsense on here appeared, I think, in the last 7 or 8 years, but I'll bow to the more experienced commissioner. But I will tell you that this has all grown way out of proportion. And I could demonstrate, if you go back 10 years in this town, 15 years in this town, what it looked like before. And furthermore, in a future meeting, we should introduce letters from other towns. And then you'll see how this is done in massive projects, not simple things like this, right? A single page approval letter on filling in 50,000 square feet of wetlands, for example. You know, that's what we should be doing, getting to the facts. We should not be introducing all stuff. I understand that this is my opinion. I understand that the commission's been doing it this way. I would like to explore moving away from this format.
Could you give us some examples? Well, hold on, just 1 second. Okay, I see that you brought this up now, and I think it's fair, definitely should be looked at, okay? If you want to present the alternatives, right? Is that what you're suggesting?
I believe you have copies of the alternatives. They were sent to you.
No.
So you can present them at any time.
No, what you were
But I-
saying, that the
but they don't
format
have
of the
any
letter, you
place
think
in
the
this-
format of the letter is overdone?
They don't have any place in this particular
Okay,
deliberation.
So I don't have, I can't, I have nothing to comment about it personally
Well-
on this, at this point, because I don't have
Yeah.
any other alternative to look at, or I'm not looking at the part of our, bylaws that show that this has to be there. So you may be absolutely right, but we have no way of really knowing that
There's
at this
no,
point.
there's no bylaws that say.
Well,
Letter-
and I
commission
don't know
letter-
what governs what, the way the letter is written. We've been
Well,
doing this letter
we
for
have-
so
We have
long.
town attorneys that can tell us that.
I guess, my thought is I would agree that this letter is very long and it's very tedious and it probably has some stuff in there that we don't need to say because it's already said somewhere else and it's obvious, but before I were to just do away with it all, I'd want to go through it step by step and talk to the staff and say, why is this here and why is it necessary?
I will remind the chairman.
Exactly,
Sorry.
that's
I
why we
will-
have staff.
I think that's.
I disagree. This is not a
I
staff
know you
letter. This is
disagree.
a commission
We
letter.
know, your
I-
third meeting on the commission and you're throwing it upside down and backwards, having a
I'm
ball.
Now the
Hold
question
on,
is.
hold on.
You're welcome. It's
Don't let me
true.
hit the gavel. One at a time, please. Okay?
I have
So-
made a motion for a reason. If you look at the first sentence here, conditions be addressed within 270 days of date of approval, or they have to come back to us. Why would we have this in this particular letter? This is, it was explained to us, this is a very early process we have in this particular project. This is a good time to look at this and get rid of it.
Well,
And-
maybe we could ask the staff to put it somewhere in their schedule to review. You know, I know you guys have a lot of stuff going on.
Mr. Chairman, you
I
have,
don't know
as
if I
part
wanna
of our meeting tonight, we have the town attorney. You can ask him to address it if he chooses to address it. Or maybe he can add something to it.
We could ask him to come up and shed some light on the situation.
Mr. Marino?
Mr. Marino?
You're needed up here.
Annie, I didn't want to.
I'm sorry, I was multitasking.
Well, you can bring up what your,
Mr. Chairman?
yes, please come up and state your name for the record.
It's Marino's Special Land Use Town Attorney.
Okay, so we have a comment from Commissioner Weinberg that our draft letter is overdone, and is
Like
not really
my
proper.
wife's cooking?
What's that?
Like my wife's cooking, or
Yeah.
overdone in a different way?
Let me, may I
Well,
restate it?
let me just generally, we believe that we should be simplifying in some way, or making it more legitimate in some way, and you can now explain a little bit more detail. Just, I don't want to turn this
But,
into a big, long
Mr.
thing.
Attorney, here's my problem with this. We issue letters on a regular basis, but let's deal with this particular case. So this particular case is a project presented by the town, which is going to go into some certain stages over the next period of time at some pace that we are unknown to us. It's very, very beginning of the process. We have a letter that's signed in the middle of the second page by the chair, followed by recommendations of the commission, which are actually, let's call them boilerplate for all practical purposes. These are things that apparently go on each and every letter. And includes such things as conditions to be addressed within 270 days of the date of approval, or this approval permit becomes null and void, subject to extension of time bar, et cetera, which basically means that the town is going to come back several times over the next 2 years or 2 and 3 years, whatever it takes us to get the project off the ground, asking for extensions on something that's very basic in format. So all I'm suggesting to the commission that we consider taking this out, and I think the objections I've heard, are positive, is that this is some sort of semi-requirement or procedural that's done each and every time, and therefore we should keep it in. I'm not trying to, say for whatever, other commissioners, but that's my interpretation. So.
Right. And so ultimately, I'm going to say, because this body operates through an action, so it's what is the will of the body, and if the will of the body, what you need to inform in your notice is, number one, if it's granted or denied, right? If it's denied, it needs to state with specificity the basis for the denial. Obviously, we're not talking about that here, so that's not germane. If it's approved, it's going to be approved and with condition, if there are conditions. And so anything else within the document is whether or not it's necessary. Again, sometimes we operate because that's the way we've done it, and every town is going to be slightly different. So before I sit on the side of the bride or the groom, I'm going to say the ultimate decision is up to the body, and should not be informed by me, because it's not. If it's not material, then it's, yes, you're correct, it may not be necessary. Doesn't mean it's inappropriate if that's the way this body has done it historically, and that's the way you choose to continue to do it. So I do not believe that I should be replacing my judgment on something that you have done if it's not illegal to do. It may not be necessary to do, but just because it's not necessary doesn't mean you shouldn't do it if that's the way you've done it. So the exact language that you are objecting to, is it the highlighted language?
Yes,
On what language?
Furthermore.
Vin, can I
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
I think there's two questions. One is that, is there stuff in here that doesn't need to be here? And that's number one. And number two, is this the right place for this information to be? Somewhere, if we have general conditions, whether they're overdone or not for any particular project, they have to be somewhere in writing, right? So that they're agreed to, right? So if there's a different space, or maybe there's a general conditions that goes along with the letter, so that it's not in the actual letter, I don't know the answer to that, but there's two questions. One is that, is there stuff in here that doesn't need to be in here? Or is just overkill for whatever reason? And is this the proper place for this information to be?
Right, so number one is, regardless of whether you call them general conditions, which means they're standard and they go along with every approval.
Well, I guess, well, first of all, I'm sorry.
All right, so if that be the case, some of the commissions that I represent have formed a standard document that are called, general conditions, and they attach those to their approvals, so it's just an attachment. So the approval would simply say, granted, subject to the following conditions, specific 1, 2, 3, and general conditions, see attached Exhibit A. All right, so that commissions have done it that way. Other commissions have done it more similar to the way you're doing, you've done it where it's kind of incorporated into the body. Why commissions create a standardized form is to avoid missing, a general, common for all. So to create that, what we can call as an attachment, which is a standard set of conditions, I don't think is inappropriate. What you need to do ultimately is you need to inform the applicant of what the applicant must do to comply with what your approval is, right? Because you don't want a applicant to say, well, I got your approval letter, it didn't have the standard conditions, I couldn't find the standard conditions anywhere, and then I didn't do it. That's why I didn't do it. So yes, the applicant should always be provided with a copy of all conditions that their approval is subject to, whether or not they're physically incorporated in the body of an approval, or whether they're attached, put on your website, and you say, see website because we don't print paper anymore, whatever your will is there, but you need to say something to inform properly the applicant, because those are the standards and the conditions that they're being held to. If there's specific language, so you're saying on page 4 of 5, standard requirements, would that be something that would say, does that need to be here? It should be somewhere, right?
Well, let me just say one thing. First of all, we have this right now. I see this on this letter, right? This is the first transfer of information between the commission and the applicant and the property owner. Then there's a pre-construction meeting, and all this stuff is gone over again.
He has something different than.
No, it's the same one.
Oh, okay.
I have a notice certificate of decision.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
it's the same one.
So you have this letter of approval, which has a whole bunch of conditions on it.
Right.
Then you have a pre-construction meeting, which goes over a whole bunch of different stuff, which is probably picking out the stuff out of here that really applies to that. Some of these conditions are discussed, didn't they?
Yeah, some of them are, but not
Like-
all of them, yeah.
Yeah, but some of them that are important to the job. And then, a lot of this stuff is actually on the plans. A lot of this stuff, this general stuff, is sometimes written in by the engineer on the engineer drawings, right? The construction drawings.
All right.
Yes,
Some-
you wouldn't
perhaps-
wanna go through in each letter, go nitpicking.
Right.
What I'm trying to say though is I'm saying that some of this stuff is seen,
Cross that.
some of this stuff, you know, is seen in multiple locations. So there's a lot of redundancy.
It may be redundancy, but I think like you said, it shows up on some of the plans, but not all of the plans. So
And not all this stuff is out there either.
But we can't, like Jim is saying, we can't nitpick and figure out which one has it and which one doesn't. This covers all the bases. And yes, if it's redundant, then they skip over it, you know,
No,
because
yeah,
it's
but I'm
already
trying to figure out
someplace.
what we can do to soften this up.
Mr. Chairman, might I
Yeah.
suggest to you that ultimately, whether it be an approval or a denial, either is subject to an appeal. And when it gets appealed, it gets presented to a court and a judge who may or may not be familiar with land use and wetlands issues. And ultimately, I think this body, which sits as the trier of fact, as a trial court would sit, would want to give its reviewing authority, which would be the Superior Court, an easier record to determine what its decision was. So instead of thinking about necessarily the applicant, you want to think about the sustainability of your decision. And you don't want to say to a court, we approve this subject to conditions, go fish. Because, you know, it makes it very difficult for a court to review your decision and to either sustain or overturn it. And if you are saying that there are conditions, and I've said it in 3 different locations, well, what is ultimately this, I think, takes all of your conditions and locates it in one place, because some people don't read plans well. Some people don't read, you know, other things well. And so a applicant should know, if it's stated in a redundant matter, that you don't have to do the same thing twice.
Is there any legal liabilities the way this letter is written right now?
I have not
I know you haven't really looked.
I haven't digested it, but is there, so
But
let's,
quickly, do you see
So-
that
Is
there's
there a
any
problem-
concern?
Is there a problem with where the signature is, that is before the end?
That's a good.
oh, that it was in the middle?
Yes.
I don't know what, well, okay, let's talk about that for a
On
moment.
page 2.
I don't know,
So
why
basically,
is
I
it
think-
there?
Well, hold on, let me just,
It
because
shows the
maybe we
vote.
could, maybe we're on the right person. So this would have to be reviewed legally. If there's a legal deficiency in this letter, meaning like something that's not up to par legally,
Right,
right? We want to know that first before we touched it. Because
right, so what would be illegal potentially? Would
I'm
be
saying if there's something in this letter that went to the higher court.
Right.
And they said, your letter is all screwed up, this is not right. We would want to know that that's a legal
Right.
question.
Right.
So the first thing is look at the legal validity of this letter.
Right.
And if it's valid as it is, we know that we're at least not putting ourselves into that type of jeopardy with this letter as is.
So-
I think that's the first start.
Yep.
And then you can definitely look at the signature line issue at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if we say, okay, this letter is fine, or you say it's, you know, you can remove this out of the letter and the letter still is legally valid,
Mm-hmm.
then we could start with, right? And I know you've seen them. I know you said you've seen ones
But
that
that's
are
okay,
more
but the-
condensed
yeah, you're
in a
right.
different format. But I think as a body, this is really the attorney's job to tell us
Right.
whether
So-
what is good and bad about our letter.
So, Mr. Chairman, number one, the import of the signature, it's not like it's a Mylar being signed by a zoning commission chairman, that, you know, it is required by statute. The effect of your approval is the vote of the body, not the signature of the chair. Okay? The publication of the approval is what starts the appeal period. So it's not the signature of the chair. So does the signature of the chair need to be on this document at all? Is question number one, because the fact that it's there or it's not there is of no legal significance to the extent that it does not reverse the direction of the body, because it's the vote of the body that is either affirming or denying the application.
I think the
So we
signature.
voted on the whole thing, so the
The
whole thing
signature might
applies.
be there.
So,
though, as-
so if there's no signature on it, the vote still stands, right? So the publication of the notice of the approval or denial is what the legal consequence, the consequences flow from. So again, if you were going to sign a document, I would tend to say your signature should be at a common sense spot, meaning, you know, toward the end of the document, because this is written, and let me tell you what I like about this document. What I like about this document is that it brings all of the material facts that a court would have to generally search the record for. You know, many commissions do not operate in a way where their decision is well confined, and the court, you'll read many cases where the judge is saying, I had to search the record to determine X and Y. What you've done, which is unnecessary, but I think not inappropriate, your whereas clauses, like a contract might be. Whereas, whereas, whereas. Whereas this happened, whereas that happened, whereas this happened. So what you're doing here is saying, whereas there was an application filed on this date, everything that a court would have to detail in its decision. So that's really what the whereas. Does that need to be there? No. You know, if you wanted to strike that. But I think it helps the court ultimately. Now, therefore, here's the vote. All right, the judge is going to want to know how you acted, so that's appropriate, subject to the following conditions. So I think it flows perfectly appropriately if you wanted to leave it in the form. I would agree that the signature line, now that maybe that is validating the votes and that's why it's there rather than at the end. So that could be why it's there. I don't know because I didn't create the document, but you know, staff can speak to that. But so I don't take issue with necessarily the document. The signature I find a little like, it's kind of like why in the middle, like you wouldn't have a signature in the middle of a contract. And this is the way it's kind of laid out. Do you want to tighten it up? Again, the whereases, you know, I've seen approvals that are on one page with an attached general conditions. So, you know, so I don't want to, there's not necessarily you know, to say that if you do it this way, it's right, and this way, it's wrong. Both could be right. It's what is the desire of the body. But I do think this ultimately helps a court that is reviewing your decision not having to search the record to find out the answers to why you got there.
So Vin?
May I make a clarification regarding the signature? Okay. If you actually read the document, that essentially is the end of the letter itself. The rest of it that comes after the signature are the conditions. That's it. That's all that's
That's
after.
what it appears to be to me.
Right.
Now, just hold on for 1 second. I'm
So
sorry.
if you wanted to like end it there and just put conditions, as Vin said, as a separate thing, you could essentially do that. That's where.
Vin says he likes the fact that it's all here and you don't have to fish for any information. So I guess, right now, I guess what I would say is that when staff and Vin could be together at a, you know, normal business time that you're normally here, maybe just do a quick overview, compare it to what you're concerned about, and just, if there's a suggestion, something change. I don't want to go into rewriting all these conditions and changing them and everything. But if you could bring, again, if you bring your evidence that you're referring to.
That's another meeting.
Okay, and then give it to staff, and then the next time you're in town hall.
Normally here Monday afternoons.
Monday afternoons, you could review, because, again, the staff, well, let me finish my thought. The staff generates the letter for us, right? They're the one, and this is all cut and paste, everything is the same, pretty much, right?
Always, yep.
Okay, so
Other than
let's
that.
let them do that part of it first, and then see where it lands. I think that's, unless there's something else specific that we want to do. I don't want to spend enough
I'm
time.
okay with that, but I have 2 points for that.
Okay, go, you first, and then, I'm
Right.
sorry.
The first thing, we should make it clear, because it was not clear to me, until I think I just heard it 2 or 3 times, that everything following the signature is pure boilerplate. In other words, there can be no, if it's not, then it should not.
Well, and I was just going to comment on that. I would say that now, you know, now therefore, it be resolved, this is the action of the body, that we're approving, right, the above, so that's your action, including or contingent on exhibits, you know, you got kind of a dangling thought there, right? So, or it would be, you know, you're approving it subject to the attached conditions. And I would say if there's non-general conditions, you might want to include that in the body because those are specific to this parcel.
I think they
That's
are.
exact- no, it's not.
No, they're not because they're after the signature line.
Right.
Oh, no, I thought you were talking about the actual the conditions we put on the approval. They're before the signature, correct?
No, they
Does it-
just said no.
Doesn't
I'm
it?
sorry.
Furthermore, the commission required the approval to be subject to the following? At least, I don't know if we're looking at the same thing.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but, Mr. Here's my point. We shouldn't be commingling boilerplate versus specific conditions. Specific conditions, and you, Mr.
Yep.
Attorney, you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, virtually every town will list the specific conditions or reference an appendix.
Right.
Okay, in the letter itself, and they should be somewhat here in the text. If we have this sort of thing is part of standard procedure, and it usually appears in appendix form, as far as I'm aware. I've never seen a letter, except for the last 10 years, here in the town of Monroe, written in this fashion. However, I understand your point. If the procedure is the procedure is the procedure, and it works, why not? My objection is the commingling of specifics, all right? Secondly, I apologize because you just made a statement that I was not aware of. You were telling me that the commissioner of this chair does not have a statutory obligation such as the chair of the planning and zoning.
Correct.
Okay, I was totally unaware of that.
Right, so it's a different kind, like.
Which means you're saying you don't have to go to Hartford.
Right, it's because, well, again, it's like, because what we're doing here is we're simply giving notice of the action of the body. So that's all we're doing, and so what you're doing is really, in a sense, trying to make the job, I view this as trying to make the life of the applicant easier.
Right.
In one 4-page document, you conform to this document and you've satisfied us. You don't have to go looking at plans, you don't have to go piecemealing it. So the goal of this commission should be to make people's lives easier. That doesn't always mean saying less, right? That means confining in one location,
Here's the bottom.
Commissioner Stewart.
right, where you go, so that we don't have a gotcha moment. You know, you didn't look at the plans and you forgot conditions ABC. So,
Okay. Mr. Stewart had a comment. You were,
No, I'm gonna keep
wait, well, we're gonna try to
waiting.
not wait.
Are we good?
I'm gonna,
So I think,
well, we need to either amend the motion.
I was gonna
Go
amend your motion
All right, so let's
to
get-
add back in all the items following
as
the.
it-
Well, we never voted on it, so.
so if
No,
you
we
want
haven't voted.
to,
You can vote on your
Seconded.
so if you want to amend your motion, you have to,
You have to amend the
you have to amend the motion and then vote on the amendment
No.
before you vote on the.
Actually, it was never seconded. Your
No, I-
motion.
Yes, it
I
was.
seconded it.
It
We
did,
couldn't be
because they couldn't
discussing
solve
it if
it.
it wasn't seconded.
Yeah.
All right, so now vote on the amendment.
Seconded so they could-
You know what, if you want to, if it's
Well,
not
I
that
did
weird,
second
you just vote no on the motion.
I can amend my own motion. I still own the motion. So I amend the motion to accept the letter as presented.
Okay, second.
okay.
So now you'd vote on the amendment.
We
No, I still own the motion.
Okay.
have a
So
motion
I amended it.
to now approve the letter as drafted. Do we have a second? And it was seconded by Commissioner, motion by Commissioner Weinberg, seconded by Commissioner Stewart to accept the letter as drafted. Discussion? Anybody?
No, we're done with it.
No one else discussing? Okay. So, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Oh, nice.
Motion passes.
One letter passes.
Jim,
The letter-
did you abstain, Jim, or no?
No, I voted aye.
Oh, okay. I
I
just
think she
wanted to
did.
make sure.
Just vote.
You know, this abstention, guys, I'm not sure people understand
Just so I
why
can
or how you can
clarify.
abstain, so.
6-0-0?
Someone didn't vote.
I know, but you know, you're not a commission, you're not allowed to just abstain for no reason.
Yeah, no one did. I'm sorry.
Right, but the chairman is included in that vote. Okay, thank you.
Just keep going. You're doing good.
Okay. All right, so now we move on to.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification.
Yes.
Did you vote on that motion?
No.
In the affirmative? Or did you abstain, or did you?
No, I don't. Do I do that?
You are a voting member.
You are a voting member, just because you're chair doesn't mean you
The
can
chairman
vote.
always votes
I
on
always-
municipal position.
Oh, then I vote in favor.
Yes, okay, that's what I assumed, but I was
I
clarifying.
was under the impression that if there's silence, it's it's a positive vote.
It's generally, it could be unanimous consent, that, you know, if there's no.
But I mean, if he goes for it, and you hear a lot of voices, and then negatives and nothing, and
Right.
abstentions, nothing, then
There
everyone voted
there was
for
a
it.
request for clarification, and we
That's
just
all.
wanted to make
Yeah.
sure.
If I was, I guess in a sense, if I was opposed to something, I would say I'm opposed. And
Yes,
if I was,
I'm sure you would have said.
We just
and I
weren't sure.
normally wouldn't be abstaining because I wouldn't be in the room if it was something I'd abstain from anyway.
Okay, thank you.
So, all right, I guess that helps. All right, so this is done.
Did you agree on 54 something?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Good job.
We have bond
Because we
release
went
and
off in a
reduction
different
reports.
tangent.
Any bond, there's nothing. Now the time extensions. WC 2014-10, 90 Longview Road, Hammond, 5-year extension request, original expiration 11/12/19. New expiration date would be 11/12/2014.
24.
24.
I'm sorry, 2014.
Yeah, and so they're just asking for their, what they're allowed to do by statute, that they can request a 5-year extension
To continue doing something?
to allow their approval to continue to be into effect until they can get their work done.
And they started the work?
They got part of it done, actually, I think this might have been part of a remediation, and they actually did all that, but they still want to do their garage.
Pool
Oh, a
and the
shed,
deck,
a
yeah.
shed and a patio.
Okay,
Would-
move to approve the extension
Is
request.
there a motion to approve the extension?
Second.
Commissioner Stewart, second from Commissioner Weinberg. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any
Any assassinations?
any coup attempts?
Okay.
Any abstentions? Motion passes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think so, I don't know. This isn't- let me-
Okay, so then the next one we voted onto the agenda, which was IWC 2018-07 for 205 Monroe Turnpike, and I think you guys got that in your packet tonight, that letter request from Russo Rizzio attorneys.
And this is
This is, they're still trying to meet their condition A, and I'm not exactly sure what the holdup is, but
What is condition A?
they're, you know, get
Filing of the
the
land records?
filing of the maps and the land records.
But they're due an extension if we have granted, right? There's no issues?
It's completely up to you. This will be the third extension that you've
Move that we
granted.
approve the 90-day extension.
a
Okay.
motion to approve the extension of Commissioner Stewart, do you have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Weinberg. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes.
Okey dokey. Thank you.
Okay, item C, agent activity reports, agent approvals, nothing, permitted uses as of right.
There's a new one added under the Public Works for 205 Church Street.
Yep.
They're planning on cleaning a swale.
This swale, but not the other guy's swale.
Yes,
This is
there's
a
an easement on that
town-owned
one.
swale.
Yeah, that one,
Town-
there's an easement on it, so, yes.
Okay, so the part of road repair, okay, so we're all set with that.
Yep.
Mhm.
Enforcement, deliberation on complete remediation
Nothing.
submissions, nothing. Clean items from the agenda. We're clear there, right?
Yeah.
No administrative review, no status updates, executive session.
That's what
What,
it is.
You want to just,
Mr. Chairman, there's no executive session needed at this time. I'm working with staff on the draft, on the NOV
okay,
that we discussed last meeting.
so that means we no longer need to get updates because we're,
No, we should still be.
because we're now.
No, you should still get updates.
You want to just give us an update, a quick update of what's going on in the situation? I mean, we are issuing the
Yes, I'm working on
the
the NOV.
citation,
So,
No, NOV.
NOV,
Right.
not a citation yet.
No, we're doing the NOV.
yes, Mr. Chairman, staff had forwarded to me, I believe, 2 days ago, might have been 3 days ago, and I don't even know what day it is.
Friday, I think it was, yeah.
Okay, the draft NOV. My schedule has not allowed me to digest that yet. I'm hoping to get to that either tomorrow or Friday. I'm then planning on meeting with staff when I'm back in Town Hall on Monday and going over it again. Because of the complexity of the issue, we want to make sure we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's to get it done. Once that is issued, we will be in a process that the NOV process follows. I was talking with the engineer who represents that property owner about the issue. I do understand there may be some proactive moves to come before this body to address some of the concerns, but that's something that is up to the applicant. The NOV process will be separate. The first selectman has asked me to attend your meetings for the foreseeable future, so I will be here, but there won't be an update other than to say this is how many more days we have until this period expires. So to the extent you want to just have it under staff report, and I will be here, we can address it if there are questions, but we will update you as matters progress and as things happen, but there may not be things to update you every single meeting.
So at this point, since we gave the notice of violation, or it's in process of happening, we don't need to, we've done an action, we don't need to be informed about what's actually happening on site any longer, correct?
At the
Because
moment.
At the moment, right.
At the moment, like
Right.
as far as the commission is concerned, I'm asking the commissioners, as far as we're concerned, since we started an action against the activities there, we're cool with not like hearing updates as far as the activity on the site.
Well, the fact that
Because
when the NOV comes out, I'm sorry.
We'll
when
hear
it-
something at that.
Then you'll get something.
Yes,
They
but
will
I'm
then
saying
have
that
to come.
we were, some commissioners were concerned that we weren't maybe not doing something that we were doing something now.
Yes.
So we
Yeah.
don't need to get the update, it's out there stuff, correct? I'm just wanna make
Once the
sure
NOV
everybody's
is-
I'll make sure everybody up here is comfortable.
Once the NOV is ready for issuance, I'm sure we can provide a copy to you as an FYI within your packet so that you see a copy of it. And then because it will be a public document at that point. And then,
They always get a copy.
right?
They always get
You get a copy anyway.
Well, they normally get the copy before they
Yeah.
tell me to do the NOV.
Right.
This-
So-
You told me to do the NOV before I finished.
Right, I mean, if you want, we can give you the draft NOV for you to make sure, we've dotted the i's and crossed the t's, which extra i's are always appreciated, and then we can issue it thereafter. Because if we're going to meet on Monday, we'd be in a position to bring it to you for your next meeting, if you'd prefer to do it that way. From a time standpoint, we're only talking about a week and a half difference in time. So, or we could, the only difference is starting the clock on the administrative process.
So just my general thing was, I just want to make sure that no one didn't have any comment, they want to make any of the commissioners, and they're all comfortable with what's happening now.
That's all we can do.
Okay.
Well, I actually did have a question, to nobody's surprise. And that is, you stated in the beginning that we'd asked that the trucking companies that were bringing in fill to self-certify that the fill was clean. So who are they submitting this? Who is monitoring this entire project?
And that's what I was talking with the engineer about, is, and that would be done through the zoning side of the process. And so I would need to discuss that with whoever on the zoning side. I'm going to be at zoning tomorrow, and I can discuss, and that I can report back to you on. I don't know if it's going to be a specific staff person within the.
So there's nothing that's happening at the moment?
Again, I don't have that information to report, so I don't want to say yes or I don't want to say no, because I have not gotten involved in the day-to-day of has there been and who's receiving it. So since I don't have the answer to the question, I don't want to mislead you. Okay, but I will inform myself and be prepared to answer that question the next time I'm before you. Okay.
All right. I think we're good with that. Thank you. Now to the minutes, of September 11, 2019. Does anybody have any comments about the minutes?
Motion to accept.
We didn't, wait a minute, we don't
I'm
have
sorry.
minutes for September
Okay.
11th.
We have a motion to accept the
You're
minutes?
right.
Well, we
We
have
don't
the 20
have,
we don't
we
have
don't have
minutes.
minutes for September 11th.
For the
It says it
9th
right
and
here.
the 25th.
Yeah, you did.
I
Well, we
didn't get
don't.
them in my email.
Didn't we not accept all of them last time we were running?
Because I was
No,
there right
we
back.
didn't, yeah, we
No.
didn't, you didn't,
We didn't
The
say
11th, there
we-
was
we were two
comments
of
that were
them, we
made
didn't-
for them to
I don't
correct,
think they were-
and I actually
We didn't do
thought we
the
should accept them with the
We did
corrections,
the,
but.
the 11th or the
decided not to.
25th, so we got the 25th and the 19th, and we don't have to.
So you want to move to the 25, or we did
So
not
what,
get.
are we, do we have,
You should have gotten rid of them. Okay.
Oh, but I didn't, I'm
All
sorry.
right, well,
Mr.
then you
Chairman.
can
I
do,
can't-
you can do the ones that you got.
I make a
How
motion
about
that we
that?
accept the minutes of September 25th.
Do the 25th and the 9th, then we'll go, I'll
okay, we
work
have a
on
motion
September.
by Commissioner Weinberg to accept the minutes from September 25th, 2019. A second?
Are we gonna have some discussion on this?
Mhm.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Stewart.
19th.
Discussion?
Okay, I wanted to,
Wait, Jim Stewart?
yeah,
Yes.
Jim and Jim.
Seconded.
I didn't know you did these. Jim.
Not these, you didn't see this
Oh,
yet.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Spence?
On page 3 of 7,
Who seconded?
Jim, Jim and Jim. Um, In the middle of the paragraph that said, Commissioner Spence asked if the fire marshal was consulted, blah, blah, blah. I just wanted to clarify, she said she wanted some kind of written notation that the fire department was okay with the design in order to prevent further complication and save the applicant money, and I will give this to you so you can copy right off there.
Okay.
And that was the only thing I saw. Yes,
Okay.
there. That's it, thank you.
Anyone else?
Chairman,
Yes.
I'll amend my motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Amended. We have a second.
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Spence. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes of the October 9th.
A motion from Commissioner Weinberg to accept the minutes of October 9th, 2019. With a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Stewart. Any comments?
Yep.
Commissioner Spence?
Okay, page 2, from the center of the page, Mr. McMahon, soil scientist, he noted the 3 principles at the edge of the wetlands that elicited all kinds of images. It's 3 principal functions at the edge of the wetlands, not principles. Got it?
There's no principles, that was.
No. But principal
about the vice
functions, it
principal?
was supposed to
Put
be
the vice
principal
principal there?
functions, and it was
He's
I got it.
your pal. Right?
And then, I'm gonna read my own writing here. Oh, at the end of the 5th paragraph, this is a hanging sentence. Mr. Seer advises other runoff, this work is needed for, it's supposed to be needed to drain the side and back of the building.
Is there any changes there, or just the grammar?
That was just that additional wording,
Oh,
to drain the side and back of the building.
Okay.
That probably is moot. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
Anything else? Yes, on the top of page 5, 3rd line down, we have Chairman Grady. It's supposed to be Chairman Romano.
Got it?
These are little things. 3rd paragraph on page 6, 3rd line in the 3rd paragraph, the commission could ask the staff.
Yep, got
The
it.
commission will the staff.
oh, try that too, maybe.
Got it?
I'm gonna will us.
Well, that was, should be in quotations, that was a direct quote. That he
Oh, was
said.
it?
Yeah, he said that they could will it to them to like handle it. It was a direct quote though.
No, it was. Okay,
All
well,
right,
we can either
we
put it
can
in
put
quotes
it
or we
in
can say
ask.
ask.
Yeah,
Either
it's
one
fine.
is fine,
Okay.
they mean the same.
Thank you.
And then on the page 7, 3/4 of the way down, it's Chairman Romano, not Commissioner Romano. That would be- Okay. And I believe that we need to clarify, we have the town attorney, but Mr. Marino is a special attorney. So instead of putting the town attorney, each one either use his name or the land use attorney or something like that, because you're not officially our town attorney.
Right, because I'm not a
Correct.
resident of the town. So
I see,
I'm not
okay.
eligible to charge the town attorney.
So that
So
just
it's-
has to be
I think
clarified.
I'm referred to as special land use counsel.
Okay.
Special.
All right,
Our special.
and that's it.
Yay, got it.
You have a new motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
If nobody has any objection to those changes, I'll be happy to amend my motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Yeah, a motion to accept the admissions as amended by Commissioner Weinberg. Second?
I'll second.
Second from
Lois?
Commissioner Spence. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any oppositions? Any abstentions? All right, minutes of October 19 are approved, passed. All right, Regulations Amendment Committee?
Yeah, we should be moving forward on the regulation, the draft, not the draft, but the suggestions for additions. We haven't brought those up, we need to bring them up and discuss them.
Okay, do we want to, how do we want to address that? Do you want to like package of, like suggest a period of time that kind of floats if we're done by, say, like 8:30, we could put 45 minutes in? I mean, how are we gonna, we keep talking about it, but we really, how do we like signify
Do
a
you want me
time?
to put it, make it its own special item on the agenda?
It should be on the agenda, yes, with a, I think with a time limit for each meeting. And if we have, we don't want to run this into late at night, but if we get an early night and we say we're gonna, put so much time into it, that's what I'm thinking. Like,
Okay. I mean, you can.
half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever we think, I don't know.
It
what we
shouldn't
think
take all that long, most of it just clarifications in addition to the definition or two. I don't remember, I haven't looked at
I
it.
mean,
It's
it
been a
can
while.
stay
So-
in that, it can stay in that spot, but we can just,
Yeah,
know
see,
that it's
Denise
gonna-
is holding it up, so that's
Oh.
what it is.
That's all it is?
Yeah,
That's
that's
all
all
it
it
We
is.
want to try
So
to
we can
knock out half of it
discuss-
now?
We can discuss it and,
We want to try
get
to do half
feelings
of
on
it
it.
now? We'll give it
wish I
to
could
9:30,
stand
and see what we get done?
I abstain.
Huh? Well, I'm saying, if we
Well,
could
everybody's
all look at it
report,
right now.
you get a copy of
I
that.
I don't know where my copy is.
I guess
but-
we'll need to make more copies
We'll
for
make
next
more.
This
time.
is the this would be the last thing, right? This is, we're done, so
Yes.
let's,
I have one thing.
Well, there's
all
one
right, go
other
ahead.
thing.
I just wanted to discuss updating the marker detail.
Yep.
Because there's been instances where we have it stated that it's maximum 75 feet, and at times the commission will say we want it 50, which is
Yep.
fine. So I wanted to maybe amend it so it says at a distance as determined by the Inland Wetlands Commission to be at a maximum of 75 feet. So this way, if we don't declare a distance,
The default is
Refers-
75.
it's kind of default goes to 75 feet, because there's times on my agent approvals, I will mark them at corners or things like that, and they may be 50 feet, they might be 75 feet, they
It
might be,
20.
it all depends. We warrant where they're located. So I was just trying to get consistency, because I know we had a little discussion about it one
Yeah.
day.
And it's funny, because I don't remember the 75 at all.
Are-
All these
are
years we've
good.
been doing, I remember 50.
Do we make a
So,
motion on that?
I know we had this
No, I don't think-
discussion some time ago, but are people able to meet a half hour earlier
To do this, you mean?
to do this, so we get this done before the meeting starts, before the public comes, we get a half hour in, and then we're done, and we're still out of
We're
normal
talking
time.
for this, for the next,
Or
this
for
sort
the
of stuff.
regulation.
well, we could do that, or like I said, if everybody's cool, we could go till 9:30 and see what we can get, if we can knock a couple things off of it. We don't have to hit
It
all
would,
once,
it
right?
would, well, the problem, I think, is that if you're gonna meet to work on the regulations,
It still has to be posted.
It does, because it's considered a meeting, right, Vin?
Yeah.
Sure. of course.
Stop multitasking.
It is.
Come on, Vin, wake up.
Yeah, so we have a special meeting.
It would be, so there's two things you can do. If you wanted to meet at 6:30, and Mr. Chairman, for the record, Vince Moreno, special land.
Loud enough, I think.
So if you wanted to meet at 6:30, you could start your meeting at 6:30. All right, and then it's just your first agenda item is this, and you can put on your agenda 6:30, and whether you call it action item 1, and then but the general public will know they don't need to show us until 7 o'clock, because they'll know that from 6:30 to 7, this is the business that you're doing, and you're going to do no other business. Or you could set your public hearings for a specific time, to say public hearings will commence at 7:30
So this
or
doesn't have
7
to be
o'clock.
public?
Yeah, hold on, it does. Mr. Chairman, that's fine.
All right, yes.
I get a chance to differ with the town attorney. We can do what he suggests, which is to have the meeting at 6:30, half hour early, as a special meeting, adjourn it at 7, and then go into the regular scheduled meeting. Otherwise, we have really made it entirely a special meeting, and that creates all kinds of problems with agenda changes. So I trust.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Mr. Commissioner, I was under the impression that we were talking about incorporating this into a regular meeting
Correct.
process going forward.
Correct, so
So-
we can't, because we put our schedule together before the first of the year, we
Rob,
can't
have you already
change.
established that?
Yes,
All right.
by town ordinance, by town statute, by charter. So, because we have a pre-scheduled calendar, we can't change that we can, but we then have a special meeting.
For the next
Right.
calendar year, you're correct.
Correct. So
Going
for
back
now,
in
we have to do a special,
2021, you can incorporate it.
right, exactly right. But we can do this now, we just have to adjourn at 6:30 and make this the only item on the agenda. We can't change the agenda during that time frame. All that other stuff. 7 o'clock, we adjourn.
Or we could just
Call
leave
the
it
regular
where it
meeting.
is, and you guys could just discuss it.
Right, so
There's always
what
that.
you can do is establish a special meeting
Correct.
at 6:30
Exactly.
for
Can we
each
have-
month, and that's just a special
Now
meeting.
there's
Just
about
for-
15 minutes left tonight, which is my suggestion. Can we just have an open discussion amongst us about some of these things? And see how we feel about
Can I
it?
have the
And
list,
then maybe we could do a
Denise?
vote, or bring it up again?
Yeah, you can't do a vote.
No.
Okay, well,
Let's
there's
just
no
talk-
vote
let's
anyway.
just-
It has to
Let's
be-
talk about them, see what anybody thinks. I don't have my copy.
And we have to submit this to P and Z too. I'm not P
Yeah,
and Z, to
but let's just have the
D-
discussions right now.
DEP.
Get some ideas out there, see if we all like it. If we all like it, then we could really plug in the time just to vote on it at the next meeting, right? Correct?
Let me see
If
what's
I'm not
easy enough.
mistaken, the way it has to be done when you do this type of regulation, is you can discuss all you want, you get kind
I
of a
can scan it
consensus
and
around
email
everything,
it.
and then you put together the changes you want, and that's what you go to
Because if we
the
skip,
public hearing.
everybody could
Yeah,
put
so
notes.
as
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
We'll go through, do the legwork
Exactly.
now. So, I don't have my copy yet. I think it's,
I know, I'm just looking to see what's easy enough to just knock off right away. There's one under 10.1, which are factors for consideration. We have the POCD. The POCD has no play whatsoever in our jurisdiction, so the recommendation was to remove that particular condition.
okay.
So that was this one here, remove that from the factors for consideration 10.1. We had put that in years ago and then realized that it really didn't have any part in wetlands decisions.
How many of them are there altogether?
No, I didn't number them. There's
10?
probably about 10,
About 10.
12, something like that, yeah.
All right, so do we all,
We do one a month.
do we all, yeah,
10 months.
does that sound reasonable to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so that sounds like we would.
On a meeting.
When we go to amending the regulations, I think everybody would approve that change, correct?
No.
I'm not saying we're doing it now.
No.
You have, so the suggestion to change amend the regulations, is everybody cool with that suggestion? We're not voting on it, we're just
Have a
asking you
meeting.
to,
Yeah, have a
So-
meeting half hour before for that purpose only, that's all I'm saying.
yes, but I'm just saying, right now, we're trying to get just the general pre-consensus, that everybody's gonna be having, that one's gonna go through.
Which one?
You're talking about this
The
last one,
POCD?
that I was
which
just
one?
talking about. The one,
POCD,
No.
what?
He doesn't agree.
You don't agree with that?
Not a chance. That's what,
Oh,
that's
so
why
we
we
don't,
have.
so that
that's
one,
why we
that
have
one
a
can be a
Bible.
little bit of work.
That's
But
why we
see-
have a
see,
Bible
Jim-
called the PLC,
Yeah,
right?
but wetlands
Is
does
totally.
not, is totally
Okay,
separate.
I'm not suggesting it's
Anything
governed
having
by
to
the
do with
PLCD.
development.
I'm not.
I know, but we have never, ever consulted it, nor would we. There's no,
Okay,
there's no
so
place
there's,
for
so
it
is
in
there
our
some, is there some,
deliberations.
The
is
state
there,
statute says that land uses board
Not-
all must
not
take it. That's why
inland
we have a
wetlands.
PLC.
No, not inland
Not
wetlands.
to
well, let's ask the,
contradict the
let's ask
rules
the,
of
let's
wetlands.
ask
I'm
the
not
special
suggesting that.
counsel.
But we don't.
He's gonna be here at every meeting.
don't-
I guess
No,
we
no,
just,
no,
we
It's
just.
not, it's not something that's.
Mr. Chairman, I would prefer to quote the statute rather than read from the statute. So if you have any other business, or if you want to table this, or give me a couple minutes, I will quote the statute, and I will give you your answer, or.
Okay, so let's let him do it. Let's look at some, couple other ones.
Add the definition of low-impact development. That was, we don't have a definition yet. That was one of the things we were going to discuss. Low-impact development is a big buzzword these days, because it is supposed to be development that is allowed to happen, but with the lowest impact possible to the wetlands. And there are ways that are very passive that can do this. They're very cost-effective. They're not as well-known because the engineers automatically jump right to the mechanical means, the more expensive means. So the emphasis at this point, through all the classes that I have taken through NEMO and UConn and that kind of thing, they are trying to get more low-impact development practices accepted within within the towns.
Definition.
So we need a
We
definition, yes.
And we can
So
lift that from
that's,
somewhere?
I have a friend that
Zoning have,
has
does zoning
written
have
LID.
I don't know.
impact
I don't
development
know.
in their regs?
So you
I
can
don't think
present
so.
us with a definition and we could just vote on it, correct?
I could get a definition, because
So
I
we
know
could
someone
discuss
who's
it,
written
see
the
if we like
LID
it, vote on it, right?
regulations for several towns.
Yeah, but remember, we're not a vote in that fashion. It's a consensus that you will
Consensus.
set a new regulation.
Right, that's right, so whatever we have to do to approve it.
And we
So
can do
that's-
these in small bits, too.
That's what I'm
We can
saying.
approve some
So
and
right
then
now-
bring them to public hearing,
We have
and
one
then, you know,
that's-
they get
that's-
submitted to DEP, and, you know, there's a whole chain of command.
So there's one that is the definition, we all agree to the definition, or want to modify it, whatever, so that's
Well,
the easy one.
we have to find out what it is first before
The
we can agree
definition, well,
with,
Denise
you know,
just
that
said she was
agrees.
gonna be able to
Okay,
provide us with the
so,
definition.
so that would be something we could discuss, I think,
Yep,
next
so
time.
another,
right?
let's go down from the top.
Um,
Just go from the top and
All
we'll
right, I
just see if
have
we.
a definition, interesting is tonight's discussion, to add the definition of a native plant. It's a plant that's a part of the balance of nature that has developed over hundreds or thousands of years in a particular region or ecosystem in New England. Only plants found in this area before European settlement are considered to be native to New England.
Where'd you get that one from?
I wish I wrote it down.
Oh, come
but,
on.
I know. One of the
All right.
bazillion of classes
If
I went
this
to.
is, if this could be referenced, to some other, literature, then.
Well, it doesn't have to be, if it's in, if it's a generally accepted.
We gotta know that you didn't make it up.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
basically
Oh,
what
did
it
I
is.
say
Well,
that?
we love you, but we can't just have you making up stuff.
So give us the reference,
Yeah,
give us
that's
the.
150,000 years.
I think-
Connecticut was under ice 150,000 years.
Not 150,
All
but
right,
it
so
says
look,
hundreds
you're
of
asking,
thousands.
you're asking to add, you're asking to
I'm-
add the
I'm-
definition or
Add to our definition section.
so you want to add this definition?
native
So
plants.
if you could provide us with the, reference, we're gonna need
I'll
it.
see if I can
Just
find
type that in
it.
Google, it'll come right
And then we
up.
can all
It might
just,
have been lifted from somebody else's regulations.
so
That's-
just,
that's-
we'll reference that. Again, we have to reference it from somewhere.
No, we don't have to reference anything.
Well, I think everybody wants to.
Well, if you get the deep
It might be a deep- it
definition,
might be a
then
deep
it's gonna be
thing, yeah.
pretty easy to accept.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It'd be easy for if it's a definition that, overrides what we have, it's easy to
We don't
accept.
have anything.
Native plants are plants indigenous to a given area and geological time. This includes plants that have developed, occurred naturally, or existed for many years in an area. Not defined many years.
Yeah, right, the amount of many years is a
Okay,
little
so the
ridiculous.
next one down the line is to add the Far Mill River. That
Right.
should, upland area,
That's the
That's-
only named watercourse in the entire town that we have that is not on that list.
is that easy to just everybody agree to?
It's, yeah, I mean, I would say that was very
fine.
simple.
So I think, so going down the list, starting from the top again, I promise, 9 more minutes. The native planting, as long as we get the reference, we should be good with that. And adding the Farm Mill Road, so right now, we're down to the 4th one, remove entirely, this is 4.2-C, remove entirely.
That one has to do with the town of Monroe having, we're calling it a permitted use as of right.
4.2C?
Yeah.
Maintenance of, by the town of Monroe or its agent of man-made drainage structures.
We can, I went to a legal course with Kakiwick, and this one was actually pulled out, and we were not named as the town, but I know our regs, so I knew it was ours. And the attorney doing the presentation is a past assistant attorney general. And she said that is illegal. We can issue a general permit if we wish, but to put it into that particular section was not legal in her opinion.
Okay, so that one's we can simply
And
refer
that's
to
just,
her.
it gives the town of Monroe right to do maintenance as a, what do we call it?
As a right.
So let's.
Non-regulated use. There's a difference between permitted as of right, then there's non-regulated, it's a,
So is that
Section
one, is that a
4 is
quick
very
one we can have
confusing.
Vin just look into and just confirm?
Well,
Can you?
legal's gonna have to redo all of them, most of them.
oh, yeah.
But I'm
that
saying,
has to
before
go
we
through
even
town
make the
attorney, yeah.
before we make the suggestion, if you could find that, was there a reference to some,
This was strictly in a class that I had taken.
so they just
And
mentioned in the
What
class,
she
they had
does
a
is she
reference?
pulls out certain parts of regs that she finds are irregular and says, don't,
Okay.
this is not,
So let's
this is
refer
not
that-
legal.
Let's refer that one to
She
Vin,
didn't say
to
Monroe,
special
fortunately.
counsel, and then the special counsel can make a recommendation on that one? Either, right? Does that make sense?
Well, again, we're gonna spend
What?
Write
Yes,
this
Mr. Wall,
down.
but if the special counsel tells us, yes, this is illegal, then it's very easy for us to say, okay, we agree, right? So we don't have to have much discussion about it. It's gotta be something that's quickly referenced.
Connecticut has something
Right.
called home rule, and a lot of these things, even though they're illegal in one person's jargon, it doesn't make them illegal.
Well, again, so we could also say this, either way, whichever way you like it.
So,
That's all. If
But I'm not
it's-
sure I can
right now, I see this thing that says, this is not legal, so when that's written, I say, okay, special counsel looks at that. That's in my opinion. Okay, going
That's
down to the
fine.
next one, 4.4, remove or its agent from center of paragraph. This is regulation 4.4,
This has to do with,
not delegate. Commission may
this
not-
has to do with declaratory rulings as to whether or not something is permitted or non-regulated or needs a permit. And according to that same lady who mentioned these same regulations in front of everybody, said that, no, you can't delegate that to anybody, that is a commission responsibility. So I think that should also go to legal opinion.
What do we think of that one, Denise?
Well, it makes it more difficult for us. The reason we put the
Yeah.
agent in there is because it makes it more difficult for us, because then all of the things, or many of the things that Denise, and what used to be Scott, would be able to say, well, I think this is non-regulated, or it should be a permitted use of right.
Yeah.
We would have to make that decision.
Yeah, I mean, instead of it coming to you,
Right.
Okay,
most
so
times I
is
can
that-
make
yeah,
the
there's still the
decision. If you get
commission,
rid of
still
me,
the
now I
commission.
can't.
All right, so this is this,
So, but I was very surprised about that, so I think we
this
should.
sounds simple and reasonable to vote on?
To get it out,
Yeah.
well, that means it's put on you guys. So you're gonna have more people coming to
we
the
wanna
meetings.
make
Wait
it
a second,
broader.
so
not
wait,
less.
we so why do we want to remove it? What's the benefit of removing it?
Only that this lawyer had said that it was not a legal
Okay.
assignment, that's the word.
Lois, can I add something there?
Sure.
That is probably correct, but the difference is if the commission authorizes it, now it is legal. In other words, they now are acting on behalf of the commission.
And that's,
It's
I'm fine with, if legal counsel said that's fine, I just personally
Do you
don't
wanna
see the
ask-
difference
do
it
you wanna-
makes.
wanna
I think
get
it's
a-
great
you
that
wanna
she
get a
can
quick-
do it.
Want to get a quick,
I would just ask if you were referring anything specifically to me, if I can just maybe.
Have time to review it?
well, right now,
no,
we're just trying to go through.
I'm trying to pay attention in this here and read with these eyes and.
Yes. No, I know.
So if you want me to look at specific things, if they could be, if I can take them and refer them to me, or.
Yeah, you don't have to comment now, we're just gonna say, we're gonna let you look at it. So this one,
Yep.
the fifth one down is another one Vin is gonna review,
Yep,
special counsel, I should say, is gonna review. Down to the next one, 7.5 F, a minimum of.
This has to do with the required submissions from an applicant. And there was a lot of, I think the reason we had done that was the applicants have not been bringing us alternatives, and they're supposed to be. And we have not been demanding them, and we're supposed to be. So that was one of the clarifications, not clarification there, but it was also, let me see, what did we have there? It's been a long time since I looked at these. 5F.
Well, then, let's go over to one that's a little bit easier, that one sounds a little complicated. 7.5.G.11, overlay of DEP's natural diversity database areas as amended on the property.
The
You're
natural-
asking for a relocation to a different area for this one? Is that what-
wait,
No, I'm asking to put it in there. DEEP's National Diversity Database area are spots on the map that exhibit where endangered or threatened species have been known to exist.
Okay.
And there are many times when there are some of these endangered species that are in an area that's proposed to be being built on. If we had an overlay of the diversity map over that area, we would know whether or not there were any considerations that we needed to make for the wildlife.
Is this on any application?
No, that's why the green is there. Should we put this in 7.5 or 7.6?
And what is that?
7.5 are the requirements, and 7.6 are if the commission wants them. There are two different sets of,
My question though is that if we put this in there, does that mean every application now has to go to a different database?
that's why
Check?
it goes into
That's why.
7.6.
right.
So if we ask for it,
Oh, you can
Then,
ask for it
yeah.
because you might be concerned. Okay.
Right.
All right, that's.
I mean, we can always ask for it anyway. We can ask for just about anything we want. But this kind of gives a heads up that this is one of the things we could ask for.
Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Okay.
They're getting lower and
No,
lower
we're
in their
not
chairs.
voting on it, just trying to get it, we just want to see which one of these things we'll be able to quickly get through. So that one's.
Wait 1 minute.
No.
We got one more minute. Let's see if we can get one more.
Oh,
Then
no,
we'll be
let's
halfway done.
let it go. We'll get,
Okay.
You're
I
trying to
think
do
if
the
it-
whole page.
No, I'm not.
Keith,
No,
Keith.
yeah, one
No,
minute,
no.
9:30, done. I
it
said
needs
9:30.
some
I
discussion.
make a motion that we adjourn.
I have a motion, Commissioner
By
Ingres
unanimous
to
consent? Go for it.
adjourn. Second?
Done, unanimous, nobody.
Huh?
Second.
Second.
Aye.
Stewart?
Aye.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
You're gonna
Motion
keep going.
passes, meeting closed.
You're gonna go all the way
9:30
down.
p.m. No, I wasn't. I said 9:30.